Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfiction guy. Back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Was the Last Son of Krypton? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya, also known as the sidekick callback, watched in horror as Black Canary. Her friend and partner in hero work was broken nearly in two over the knee of the villain Muscular. The titanic beast pretending to be a human snorted in derision, dropping Black Canary like a sack of potatoes. He rolled his shoulders, cracking his neck, uncaring of the blood that spilled from his ears. Dinah had screamed herself hoarse and still it wasn't enough. The villain laughed, stepping over the body of Vixen. Another hero who had the misfortune of being in the forest near the village Muscular decided to terrorize. The transformation villain laughed, malice in his eyes. Izuku raised her arms in a defensive stance. "That all you girlies got?" he chuckled, "a bloody nose and a pair of burst eardrums?" Muscular crouched low, a sneer etched on his face. "Give me a break." The monster of a man shot forward towards Izuku like a charging bull, shaking the earth with every step. Izuku rolled to the side at the last minute, feeling the familiar tug in her gut as she pulled a boulder with her quirk straight into the villain's back. Muscular barely grunted, pulling a lamppost from the ground and swinging it around like an oversized bat. It was all Izuku could do to dodge out of the way of its path. "Think Izuku. I need something to restrain him long enough for the backup we called to arrive." Her eyes fell on a truck filled with steel beams. Now that's just convenient, Izuku thought with a snort. Now she just needed to... Gotcha! A backhand from a fist larger than her face slammed into her side, sending Izuku bouncing down the street. She came to a stop and groaned, thankful for the protective gear she wore under her leather jacket. Slowly she got to her feet, leaning against a trailer for support. The trailer full of the steel rebar that she needed. Perfect. Good thing Muscular was an idiot. She felt the tug in her gut getting stronger as she glared daggers at the villain, who laughed again as he walked leisurely toward her. "Canary really effed up choosing you, huh?" He laughed. "I mean, imagine your hero dying just because you weren't strong enough." That was the wrong thing to say. Izuku's eyes shone green as she pulled beam after beam from the trailer and sent them hurtling after Muscular. He dodged the first few, but those just came back, slamming into his back and twisting themselves around his arms and legs, bringing him to a halt. Muscular laughed. For the umpteenth time. Did he find everything funny? "You think you can stop me?" he yelled. "I'm Muscular Beach." More muscle fibers sprouted from his body, forming around the beams already there. He took a step. Then another. Then another. Each step was easier than the last. The tug in Izuku's gut got worse and worse as she sent dozens of pieces of rebar at him. Muscular didn't even bother trying to dodge, simply adding more muscle mass with each piece of rebar that curled around his body. He wouldn't stop. Another step. Another step. Another step. Tears poured down Izuku's eyes as Muscular came to a stop in front of her, a grin etched on his face. The tug in her gut was unbearable. As an oven-mitt-sized hand closed over her head, Izuku closed her eyes. Dinah stood on a plane of nothing gazing deep into Izuku's eyes. "You're just gonna stand there and take it?" Izuku shrugged helplessly. "I did all I could, he's too strong," she said. Dinah looked at her sternly. "When you think you've done all you can, what do?" Dinah pumped a fist. Izuku smiled as tears welled up in her eyes. "You go plus ultra," she yelled. Dinah smiled at her. "You always hated that motto," Izuku whispered. Dinah nodded. "Way too tacky," she agreed. "Now go kick that villain's butt." Izuku's eyes snapped open. She dodged the hand that sought to crack her head open like a coconut and jumped backward. The entire trailer lurched, hundreds of pieces of rebar shooting forward and wrapping around Muscular. Then the trailer came flying, slamming into the villain and throwing him on his back. He couldn't do anything. For a second, Izuku was winning. Then everything went wrong. The tug in Izuku's gut snapped, and then all Izuku knew was pain. A punch from the recovered Muscular sent her flying into the as she was fading out of consciousness, she heard a thump. "It's all right now. But all might. Because I am here." Izuku Midoriya was driving down a dirt road, lost in thought. It had been a week since she had fought Muscular. All Might was able to put Muscular out of commission, but it came at a cost. The doctors told her the strain of using her quirk to that extent had damaged it, far beyond what any of them could repair. Even the youthful hero, Recovery Girl, couldn't fix a fundamentally broken quirk. Izuku could still use her quirk, telekinesis, but it was relegated to the attraction of small objects like mugs from now on, effectively ending her career as a sidekick. Izuku didn't mind. Making sacrifices was a part of a hero's job. What she did mind, however, was that while she was in a coma, her boyfriend Hisashi had seen fit to take a job in America, leaving immediately. He left a note on her bedside explaining that he could make more money in America, but Izuku couldn't help but wonder if he left because she was, for all intents and purposes, quirkless. He had voiced his disdain for those without quirks in private, but quickly shut up at Inko's glare. Her mother had been quirkless, and she was the kindest person she ever knew. Izuku was ripped from her thoughts by the sound of a meteor tearing through the sky, coming straight at her. She yelped and swerved her car out of the way before it slammed into where she had just been, bouncing twice before ripping a deep trench in the earth. In the crater, it already started cooling. Izuku sat there, shocked at the near miss. Should I report this to someone? She thought as she got out of her car, staring at the meteor. Except it's not a meteor, she realized as she drew near. The thing that had almost killed her was unlike anything she had ever seen before. Sleek and curved with a powerful-looking thruster in the back, it was no doubt some kind of spacecraft or missile. It hadn't blown up yet, so Izuku assumed it wasn't the latter. Even still, she stiffened into a fighting stance out of reflex as the presumed craft hissed out steam, before opening at the front. It was then that Izuku decided to call someone. Before she left the hospital, All Might had come to her bedside. She smiled at the memory. Despite his prowess on the battlefield, the man was a gentle giant. They talked for a while about her predicament, and he had awkwardly given her his phone number, telling her to call him if she ever needed something. With a grin and, "Goodbye, Miss Midoriya," he was off, no doubt to save another village. She opened her phone and clicked on his contact, starting a message. "Izuku, hey, can you come to me? I found something strange." All Might. "Of course, Miss Midoriya, I am on my way now." Izuku chuckled, wondering how he managed to convey his same loud voice in a text before she walked to the front of the mysterious craft. What she found in it shocked her. In the rocket that nearly killed her was a child. A child with luscious dark green locks and freckled cheeks, fast asleep in a pile of black blankets. Izuku stared at it, wondering how it got here. "It kind of looks like me," she thought idly. Her motherly instincts took over as she reached into the craft and picked up the dozing child. He was damp and cold, as if he had been covered in ice. "I wonder if it's a girl or a boy?" She moved some of the cloth. "Definitely a boy." Izuku held the baby in her arms, noting that he seemed heavy for his size. What was he doing in this thing? She wondered before a crash jostled her out of her musings and she spun around. All Might had arrived. "I am here." At this, the baby began to cry. "All Might," Izuku said crossly, rocking the infant back and forth, attempting to lull him back to sleep. All Might, for his part, looked sheepish as he stared at the child in the brave woman's hands. Then a confused look crossed his face. Keeping his voice as low as possible, he said, "I thought you and Hisashi hadn't dash." Izuku hurriedly interrupted him, realizing what it must look like. "He's not mine," she exclaimed. Izuku then explained everything that had happened on her drive. All Might contemplated the craft before him. All Might turned to look at her. "I think we should tell no one of this. We have no idea what this young boy is capable of, or who is after him." He paused, looking back at the strange vessel. "It's clear that this is an escape craft. I will take it to my house in the countryside." He looked down at her. "What should we do with him?" he asked, leaning down and picking up the multi-ton vessel with ease. Izuku pursed her lips, looking down at the child, who had finally fallen asleep. "What should we do with him?" she thought. It pained her to admit it, but before this had happened, she had no idea what she was going to do with her life. Her career as a sidekick was over, Never mind as a fully fledged hero. This boy needed a mother, and she needed a purpose. I'll take care of him, she thought. I'll take care of him, she declared confidently, looking up at the monolith of muscle, who grinned at this. He thought she would. All right, he's going to need a name, he said, pointing at the infant. Inko looked down at the boy who looked so much like her. She could already tell she was going to love him like she had given birth to him herself. The infant balled his hands into fists, grinning in his sleep. Izuku. His name is Izuku Midoriya. 9 months later. Young Midoriya, just where do you think you're going? A little boy with a forest of dark green hair and freckled cheeks froze and turned around to look at a giant tower of muscle who was grinning from ear to ear. B-Barn, the boy said nervously, struggling to form the word. All Might raised one eyebrow. Did you eat all of your lunch? Izuku nodded rapidly, his head a blur. Even the broccoli? The blond man questioned mischievously, noticing the guilty look on the green-eyed boy's face. All Might leaned down, a glint in his eye. You wouldn't want me to tell your mother about this, would you? Izuku widened his eyes and shook his head just as rapidly as he nodded it, staring up at his captor. Well then, you better finish it before she finds out. Izuku gave a look of disgust before it turned to resignation as he followed All Might back to a ranch-style house in the middle of the Japanese countryside. It was built by All Might himself, not wanting to let anyone know where he hung his cape, so to speak. When he was in America making a name for himself, he stayed in a house nearly identical to the one before them. He loved it so much that when he returned to Japan, he immediately started work on one of his own. It had taken years, but it was finished. Now it housed a woman and her hyperactive kid. When they arrived in the kitchen, Izuku ran to the bar where he left the broccoli and inhaled it, his hands moving faster than the normal eye could see. Within seconds he was finished. Now that wasn't so hard, was it? All Might asked. Izuku shook his head, a sheepish grin on his face. All right, you can go play now. Be careful or your M will kill me. All Might exclaimed, only partly joking. He'd only seen Inko Midoriya angry once in the past year he had known her, and that was once enough. The green-haired boy ran out. All Might sighed, sitting down. He hadn't slept in 3 days, on account of a rise in villain attacks throughout the country. It had been weeks since he had been home, busy as the #1 hero. He returned just in time to catch Izuku sneaking through the field. Broccoli was a lucky guess. All Might smiled. He's such an energetic kid, All Might thought. I wonder what his quirk will be. He was brought out of his musings when Inko walked into the kitchen, a basket of clothes on her hip. She looked at the empty plate, then at All Might, smiling. You got him to eat it, she said happily. I only had to threaten to tell you about it, Miss Midoriya. All Might said, his voice filled with humor. She smiled again before her face turned serious. We need to talk. All Might looked at her and nodded. He already had an idea of what she had on her mind. They sat there looking at each other before Inko took a deep breath. Izuku needs friends his age. I appreciate all that you've done to help us, but that doesn't change the fact that there's no one out here but us, she said. All Might had built his house in a valley west of the Kiso Mountains. It was isolated but within range of most of the country for All Might. The government had given the land and the surrounding woods to him as thanks. The tired man nodded, speaking softly. If that's what you think is the best course of action, I won't stop you. Inko nodded, smiling again. Where will you go? He asked. The green-haired woman pursed her lips, thinking hard. Muzudafu, she finally said. Yue is there. All Might nodded. Maybe they'll be able to figure out what he is. Izuku was not a normal toddler. He was heavier and larger, and incredibly smart. He started walking at just 3 months old and had started to form simple sentences only a month ago. He was far more developed than he had any right to be. They still had no idea how Izuku had ended up in that craft, and they hadn't told the government about where they found him. As far as the world was concerned, Izuku Midoriya was the son of Inko. All Might had brought one of his trusted friends, youthful hero, recovery girl to look at him, and she confirmed that the boy was completely fine, if a bit big. They were both jostled from their thoughts by an explosion that rocked the house. They ran outside to see the barn with a huge jagged hole in its roof, smoke pouring out of it. A roar was coming from the inside of the red building. Inko looked at All Might and saw panic in his eyes. She quickly realized why. She started running, All Might close behind. There was fear in her heart as she screamed, "Izuku!" 5 minutes ago. Izuku made it to the barn, spitting as he tried to get the taste of broccoli out of his mouth. He hated it, but he had no choice. Both he and All Might knew better than to make his mother mad. The only time he had ever seen her angry was when he was being difficult the entire day. It came to a head when he threw his plate of onigiri, rice ball, at All Might. His mom had erupted, putting the fear of her wrath into the two of them, before reverting to her kind, bubbly self. Izuku shook his head, looking around at the vehicles. They were what All Might called American muscle cars, and Izuku loved them almost as much as he loved heroes. There were 3 of them, all in various states of repair. Being the #1 hero had its perks, and one of them was money. These cars were replicas of ones from the 20th century. All Might had seen one on patrol in America and had fallen in love, learning all he could about them before he returned to Japan, where muscle cars became his project the second after he finished the barn. He showed them to Izuku when he had wandered down to the barn, curious about it. The cars in question were a 1966 Dodge Charger, a 1964 Ford Mustang, and a 1967 Chevrolet Camaro. All 3 had cost a fortune alone, and even now All Might tinkered with them, trying to make them go even faster with skills he learned in America. Izuku walked past the red Charger and the yellow Camaro before stopping in front of the dark blue Mustang, which was his favorite. Even now Izuku had no idea how All Might managed to fit in the cars. He seemed to shrink as he got in every time. Izuku was about to do what he normally did, climb in the Mustang, and pretending to drive it. Instead, he paused as he hit his foot on one of All Might's tools. He leaned down to grab it, only to clutch his head in pain as he collapsed. He widened his eyes. He was able to see through the concrete floor. He looked around and realized he could see through the barn and house, his mom and All Might talking to each other before he looked down again. There, underneath the barn, was a thing he had never seen before. It was smooth and curved, a light gray color. On the top, it was cracked open, and on the bottom, a huge thruster lay dormant. Izuku blinked hard, his vision returning to normal. He stood up and looked around, eyes landing on a hatch in the floor, partially hidden by a rolling cabinet. He walked up to it and pushed it out of the way. He lifted the hatch, revealing a ladder disappearing into the void. Izuku paused, finding a light All Might used when working on his cars, then climbed down the ladder. He turned around, lighting up the object in front of him. It was suspended in the air, held by thick chains. A catwalk wrapped around the top of the thing, which Izuku assumed was the front. He made his way up, fingers clenched around the lower bar of the handrail. Once at the top of the stairs, he made his way to the open capsule. Izuku looked at it, trying to figure out what it was. He noticed it looked like a seat, but it was far too small for All Might. Hesitantly, he sat in it. Everything was still for a few seconds when suddenly all hell broke loose. Kryptonian detected. Launch sequence initialized, a metallic voice said in a language Izuku didn't understand before the doors on the craft spun closed. The ship began to shake as its thruster violently powered up, flames rebounding against the ground and into the roof, blowing it open. Izuku was terrified, holding on for dear life as the craft continued to power up, slowly lifting until it was straining against the chains. Halfway through the top floor of the barn, fire searing the beloved cars. Through the roaring of the thruster, Izuku began to faintly hear something else. Izuku! 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 His head shot up. It was his mom. She was worried about him and probably mad. Determination seized his fear and overwhelmed it, and Izuku made a fist with his hand. He slammed his fist against the shell, cracking it. He did it again, making the hole larger, and leaped out of the ship, surprising himself with his strength. He fell on the hood of the Mustang, denting it, and the craft hovered for a moment before it landed with a thud in the barn's basement, cracking the scorched floor. Izuku sat up shakily, eyes as big as saucer plates as they looked around the burning muscle cars. Izuku! I am here, where are you? All Might yelled as he crashed through the closed barn door. Here! Izuku managed to squeak out. All Might bolted to him, faster than the normal eye could see. He grabbed Izuku and ran out of the now ablaze barn. Izuku! His mother wailed, tears bursting like waterfalls from her eyes. At this, Izuku began to cry too, the stress now overwhelming him. All Might knelt and handed Izuku over to her before he looked back at the barn, tears in his eyes. He loved those cars. But at least Izuku was safe, though he didn't know how he ended up on the hood of his Mustang. He looked back at the bawling pair, waiting for the two of them to stop crying. After a few minutes, the two had created a puddle the size of All Might and had calmed down. Inko looked at Izuku sternly. What happened? Izuku withered under his mother's gaze before he slowly recounted what had happened to the concerned pair. When he finished, he looked up at the shocked pair, worried about what they were going to do. Inko sighed before she said, I'm not mad at you, Izuku, I'm just glad you're safe. Izuku visibly relaxed before turning to All Might. I'm sorry about your sea cars, he said shakily. All Might gave him a sad smile before speaking softly, It's quite all right, young Midoriya. I am just glad you're safe too. He looked back at the burning barn. I wanted to remodel it anyway. That was a lie, but it was more important to comfort Izuku. The fire was already fizzling out, revealing the charred corpses of the cars. The trio made their way back to the house, reflecting on everything that occurred that day. All Might was still shocked that Izuku had been able to puncture the craft that had held him. He must have one hell of a quirk. All Might thought as they Inko fussed at Izuku, making him promise to ask her if it was okay to go someplace, especially if it was a basement. The rest of the afternoon was spent in blissful peace after the excitement of the barn incident, as it was called. That night Inko put Izuku to bed, once again reassuring him that she wasn't mad. She went downstairs and saw All Might in the massive leather recliner he had made for him, another luxury he discovered in America. Inko sat in a smaller one next to him. This thing is really comfortable, Inko thought before taking a deep breath. Sorry about your cars. I know how much you loved them. All Might sighed, his massive chest expanding and deflating, before speaking delicately, aware of Izuku. It's all right, they're replaceable. Besides, Izuku's safety is much more important, Miss Midoriya. Inko nodded before speaking again. Even so, I still plan on moving to Mizudafu. I have money through my sidekick work and life insurance from my parents. That'll last us a few years until I can figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life. She paused, but All Might did not comment. You've been a great help and a good friend this past year, but I don't want you coming around. It might put a target on Izuku's back that he doesn't need. When his true power emerges, I will contact you so you can train him. All Might turned his head at her, fierce blue eyes boring into her. He almost revealed his true form to her then, but before he could, she glared at him. I don't want someone to die because you were in Mizudafu and not able to reach them in time. This is not negotiable, she stated fiercely. All Might nodded, reluctantly, and she softened her gaze. She got up and walked over to All Might, who eyed her warily. She stood up on her toes and planted a kiss on his cheek, making him stiffen. Thank you, All Might. She turned around and began to make her way to bed. Tashinori Yagi. She froze, looking at All Might, who was sitting up in his recliner. My name is Tashinori Yagi, he said quietly. A wide grin formed on Inko's face. Thank you, Tashinori. We'll be gone within the month. Tashinori laid back in his chair. Once she was gone, he said softly, Thank you, Inko. 15 months later. Inko walked slowly, feeling the breeze on her face. It reminded her of Tashinori's home in the woods. She didn't regret leaving, but she did miss the quiet calmness of the place. She was in a park with Izuku, who was hopping back and forth across the path in an All Might onesie, yelling about how cool heroes were. While they were staying with All Might, he would give Izuku every new All Might product that was made. They made a lot of All Might products. Izuku's room was covered in posters and figurines. Izuku didn't mind, he thought All Might was the coolest hero ever, saving people with a smile, even though he didn't remember the time they spent with him. Izuku just loved heroes and their quirks. He had a coloring book full of his favorite heroes, in which he would also write crude notes about their powers. Most could be summarized as cool or awesome. Inko sat down heavily, watching Izuku. The past 6 months had not been easy. Izuku was a handful, especially for one person. He seemed to have limitless energy and boundless enthusiasm, but only when he was with his mother. At the preschool she enrolled him in, he would shut down, not interacting with someone unless they spoke to him. He hunched over, not showing how much taller than the rest of the class he was. He made every effort to avoid standing out. She was worried about him but didn't know what to do. "You got stuck with a kid too, huh?" Inko's head whipped towards the voice and saw a tall blonde woman with scarlet eyes standing over her. "Is this seat taken?" Motioning towards Inko's side. Inko shook her head, moving over to make more room for the woman. The blonde looked at her. "My name's Mitsuki Bakugo," extending her hand. Inko took it, a small smile on her face. "Mine's Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you." Mitsuki smiled then. "Nice to meet you too. My kid is the blonde brat over with who I assume is your son." Inko's head whipped around and saw Izuku with a boy with a mane of blonde hair. Surprisingly, he was talking to the boy, his face bursting with joy as they talked about their favorite hero All Might. The blonde boy smacked Izuku's shoulder, somewhat roughly, but his face showed he meant it in play. Bellowing "tag," he took off. Izuku paused for a second before he grinned and ran after his new friend. "He's a little rough around the edge, but he's sincere when he's not annoying," Mitsuki said. "His name's Katsuki." Inko leaned back, relaxing. "Mine's is Izuku," she said. The two women talked for half an hour about their lives. Inko found out that Mitsuki worked in the design industry, where she met her husband. Inko wasn't surprised when she said she was the one who asked him out, refusing to take no for an answer. All the while their two boys ran back and forth down the path, Katsuki with some anger in his eyes every time he was chasing Izuku. Mitsuki checked her watch. "I need to get going. Give me your phone number, will you? I have a feeling these two are going to be inseparable," she said, handing out her phone. Inko eagerly agreed, happy that her son had finally found a friend. They said their goodbyes and started making their way home, both mother and son content. 2 years later. What Mitsuki had said was true. Wherever Bakugo went, a green-haired boy with freckles was sure to follow. They spent their time exploring the woods that surrounded Tokyo, Inko becoming a little less protective now that her son wasn't alone. They were walking along a creek, a smug grin adorning Bakugo's face. "I can't wait until we have our quirks," Izuku said, smiling from ear to ear. "It's going to be so cool." Bakugo laughed, not turning around as he said, "Yeah, but mine will be so much cooler than yours." Izuku only smiled quietly at that, letting his friend's arrogance run wild. He looked up through the trees at the sky and smiled as rays of sun landed on his face. "Once I have a quirk," he thought, "I can start my path towards becoming a hero as great as All Might." "You're quirkless?" Izuku froze. This couldn't be happening. He had to have a quirk. How else was he going to become a hero as awesome as All Might? But the doctor just shook his head and said sorry. His mom hugged him, a peculiar look on her face. She almost seemed puzzled. She dropped him off at school, kissing him and promising to make pork cutlets, his favorite, for dinner. Izuku only nodded, unable to form the right words. He was like this for the whole morning, not speaking to anyone. At recess, he sat by himself. Bakugo didn't mind. He had only recently gotten his quirk, Explosion, and had already established himself as the top in the classroom hierarchy, calling people extras, among other things. He and Izuku barely hung out anymore, and when they did it was only because Izuku followed him everywhere. Izuku was torn from his thoughts when he heard a scream. He looked over and saw one of his classmates cowering from Bakugo, explosions at his fingertips. He had gotten more aggressive than ever, picking fights whenever he felt like it. Izuku knew it was wrong but didn't know how to stop it. Now, the frustrations with Bakugo and what happened that morning overwhelmed Izuku, and he ran in front of the kid. "Be Bakugo. Stop this." He stuttered, shaking like a leaf. Bakugo paused. "So you've decided to talk today, huh?" he roared. "What's wrong, Bihi?" Izuku looked down at his feet. I went to the doctor today. He said I am quirkless. He said, tears forming in his eyes. Bakugo paused before he swung his fist back, fire in his eyes. Then you're useless. He hit Izuku, making him fly back from the force of the explosion. Izuku sat up, his face covered in soot, not noticing that he wasn't really hurt. Bakugo glared at him. Stay away from me, he screamed. Deku? Oh, useless. Izuku thought, tears running down his face. He stood up. Two can play at that game. He thought suddenly, a fierce glare focusing on Katsuki. I will not Kaken. Someone needs to rein you in. He said, straightening his back, revealing how much taller he was than the rest of them. Kaken and his underlings stared at him. Whatever Deku, you freak. Kaken growled, turning around and walking away. Izuku deflated, hunching over again. Thank you, a weak voice croaked out. He turned around and looked at his classmate, smiling. And no problem. They're going to be targeting me now, so stay away. I don't want you to get hurt. Izuku said, his face growing somber. The kid nodded, scrambling to get away from him. Izuku sighed. He looked up at the sun, feeling its warm gaze on him, and determination hardened his heart. He clenched his fist. Just because I don't have a quirk, doesn't mean I'm useless. I will become a hero whatever it takes. 9 years later, Izuku walked to school, flipping through one of his hero analysis for the future notebooks. It had become a habit of his to take notes on heroes and their quirks, jotting them down at an insane speed. He would try to figure out the weaknesses in the quirks and work out how to counter and boost them. He had become quite good at it, able to analyze and find a weakness in a quirk in minutes. A loud crash rang out, startling Izuku. He looked up to see an enormous villain smashing a roof. He smiled as he ran closer to the action, stopping behind police tape. Who's fighting? He asked excitedly, then stared. It was Kamui Woods, the up-and-coming young hero. His quirk is Arbor. It allows him to control and enlarge his wooden parts into strong branches. You asked the question, but you answered it for us. You know your heroes, don't you, kid? The bystander next to him said. Well. Izuku sheepishly grinned, before looking back to the fight. Kamui Woods dodged around the beast several times before he stood still, arm in front of him. Izuku realized what he was going to do. Get ready. It's about to happen, he said. Lacquered chain prison. Kamui yelled out, just as a massive woman in a skin-tight bodysuit yelled, Canyon Cannon, and launched the villain down the street, knocking him out almost instantly. The woman stood up. My name is MT Lady, and this is my debut. I'd like it if you'd let me handle it, she said to a dejected-looking Kamui Woods. The reporters and guys flocked to her as she showed off her, assets, before grabbing the now shrunken villain and wrapping him in steel beams. Izuku sighed, before pulling out his notebook and started taking notes on her. He had really wanted to see lacquered chain prison in action. If she worked a bit on her quirk, I bet she could enlarge one limb at a time, but it seems flashiness is more her style. So, looking to become a hero? Good luck. The same bystander said, looking over Izuku's shoulder at his notebook. Izuku flashed a bright smile. I'll do my best. You're about the age where you need to decide on your future, so think about all avenues. Who am I kidding, you all want to be heroes, don't you? The entire class, Izuku excluded, roared their approval. Teach! An ashen-haired boy yelled out. Don't lump me with all these extras. We both know I'm better than all of them. Kaken exclaimed. That's why I'm applying to UA. At snide murmurs he whirled around, declaring, I aced the mock exams. I'm the only one here who could ever dream to get into UA. I will surpass All Might, he declared, shocking the class. Deku is also applying to UA, the teacher said quietly. The class turned around to look at the teen holding his notebook, who seemed to want nothing more than disappear. They erupted in laughter. Kaken stomped up to him. You're worse than these rejects. You don't even have a quirk. How could you possibly hope to compete with me, let alone get into UA? He yelled. Izuku seemed to shrink down even further, hugging his notebook to his chest. I just want to follow my dream of becoming a hero. I'll never know if I don't try. I don't want to see compete with you, Kaken. He said quietly. At this, Kaken grabbed his notebook and activated his quirk, burning it before throwing it out the window. You're hopeless. You might as well throw yourself off a roof and hope you'll have a quirk in your next life. Katsuki, what did I tell you about using your quirk in class? The teacher yelled. Kaken looked back at Izuku. Stay out of my way, Deku, he said before he walked back to his seat. Izuku scrunched even further down, tears in his eyes. Ever since he and Kaken had fallen out, the red-eyed boy had seen fit to make his life difficult. He had hit him with his explosion quirk, calling him Deku and a freak. The latter would hurt less if it wasn't true. At 14 years old, Izuku was 6 feet tall, 182 centimeters, and well-built. He tried to hide it by hunching over and wearing large, baggy clothes, but he stood out like a sore thumb nonetheless. Kaken was the worst offender by far, his ego growing exponentially with every compliment he was given. It didn't help that Izuku seemed to shrug off hits that would send others flying, which only served to make him angrier. Izuku was the only one who would stand up to Kaken, protecting the younger children from Kaken's wrath by directing it on himself. The rest of the day was uneventful. Izuku was able to get his notebook back. It had luckily landed in the pond just outside of the building, so it wasn't completely lost. The rest of the class left him alone after Kaken's outburst, no doubt feeling pity for him. He was able to avoid Kaken on his way out of the school and now walked alone, mulling over what he said as he walked into a tunnel. Izuku was wrenched from his thoughts when long slimy tentacles wrapped around him, pulling him in. Sorry kid, but I need to hide. Ooh, you're strong. I'll be having fun with you, a sleazy voice said. No, Izuku thought. It can't end like this. The hero. Izuku strained against the monster, slowly pushing against the tentacles, before one lodged itself in his throat, taking him by surprise, causing Izuku to grab his throat. Izuku closed his eyes, bracing himself for the end. I am here. Detroit, smash. At this, the entire tunnel shook, an air draft pushing the monster out of his throat. Izuku opened his eyes. There, standing before him, was a giant in normal clothes. 2 great blonde strands stood up like horns, and fierce blue eyes stared above a great smile. All Might, Izuku thought before he promptly passed out. Izuku awoke to someone lightly smacking his cheek. Hey, you awake, kid? A deep voice asked. Izuku opened his eyes. Above him was All Might, a concerned smile on his face. His eyes widened. Hey now, don't need you passing out on me again, All Might said, extending his hand. Izuku grabbed it, staring in awe at his idol as he picked him up effortlessly. Kinda heavy there, but are you all right? He asked. Izuku nodded, eyes as wide as dinner plates. All right, I gave you something to remember me by, but I really need to go and take this guy to jail. Bye-bye, he said, patting a bottle in his pocket. Izuku looked down at his notebook, noticing All Might's signature on it. He looked up at All Might and realized he was leaving. Wait, he yelled, grabbing All Might's calf just as he leaped, catapulting into the air with him. All Might looked down and saw Izuku hanging on for dear life. He started to jostle him. Come on, kid, I love my fans, but this is ridiculous. Izuku held on tighter. No way. If I let go now I'll die. He yelped, making All Might freeze. Oh right. Unnoticed by either of them, the bottle fell out of All Might's pocket, where it would be kicked open a few minutes later by a certain ashen-haired boy. They landed on a rooftop, Izuku on All Might's back. That was dangerous, kid. Normally I would scold you, but I'm on a clock. Knock on the door a few times, they'll let you in eventually. All Might said, preparing to leap again. Wait, Izuku said. All Might looked back at him. I just wanted to ask. Izuku said, looking down. He remembered his mom crying with him, telling him she was sorry. He remembered every insult his classmates threw at him. And he remembered Kaken, telling him to throw himself off of a roof. He looked up into those piercing blue eyes and spoke clearly. Can someone be a hero without a quirk? All Might stared at the kid, not noticing the steam rolling off of him. Do I know this kid? He looks familiar. The kid in question was rambling at top speed. All Might could barely understand him, but he did understand he was distressed about his lack of a quirk. All Might's body suddenly shrank in a cloud of steam. All Might? A voice stuttered out. Ah shit. The steam was blown away, revealing All Might's true form to the kid, who screamed. "For you. Where's All Might?" he yelped. All Might sighed, speaking in a serious voice. "I am All Might, young man. You know how guys at beaches SCK in their guts to look impressive? That's how I am." He lifted his shirt, revealing a horrifying scar. "Got this 5 years ago. Took out half of my respiratory organs," he said, scratching his chin. "To answer your question, young man, I don't know. To be a hero means you're willing to risk your life for the greater good of others. I can't ask that of someone who doesn't have a quirk." All Might explained. Izuku nodded, tears in his eyes, before he ran to the door, pulling it open and disappearing down the stairwell. All Might walked after him before he stopped at the door. "It's broken? I thought he said he was quirkless," he thought. "Well, I need to get this guy dash." All Might froze, patting his pocket. The slime monster he grabbed wasn't there. He heard an explosion in the distance. He turned around, seeing it in the distance. All Might smacked his forehead. Ah shit. A few minutes later, Izuku walked, his head low. His dream was shattered, by his idol no less. He heard the explosion in the distance but was so lost in his misery that he didn't notice his legs carrying him to it out of habit. Izuku looked up, seeing a crowd forming. It got some kid with a powerful quirk. One of them said, "What's the point, I'm quirkless?" Izuku thought. But his curiosity got the best of him as he walked to the front of the crowd. He froze. There, screaming in rage, was Kaken, engulfed in the slime villain from earlier. Worse, none of the heroes seemed willing to do anything. Unbeknownst to Izuku, All Might had also arrived, unable to do anything in his weakened state. I'll kill you. I'll dash," Bakugo screamed before a gooey tentacle clamped around his mouth. "They're not going to do anything?" Izuku thought, eyes wide with horror. The other heroes sat helpless, waiting for someone to save the kid. But there isn't anyone coming, Izuku thought, noticing All Might on the side of the crowd. Green eyes stared into blue ones and noticed the defeat in them. Izuku's legs moved of their own accord, appearing a blur to everyone else. He didn't know what he was doing, he just couldn't help himself. "Deku sturdy. What the hell are you doing?" Kaken roared through the tentacle. "I have to help you. Even if you don't want it." Deku yelled back, tears in his eyes. "That's what being a hero means." He grabbed Kaken, pulling on him with all his might and flinging him to the heroes. "Demon, you kid!" The villain screamed, whipping his tentacles toward Izuku. Izuku pulled back his fist and screamed, moving it forward. At the same time, All Might appeared and did the same thing. Detroit smash! They both screamed, wind howling as an air blast blew the monster to pieces, blowing a hole in the cloud above. It started to rain. All Might put his hand on Izuku's shoulder, a wide smile on his face. "I really am pathetic. I should have remembered to practice what I preached. But now I must go." He turned around to face the silent crowd and gave a thumbs up. Then he was gone, a trail of steam arching over the city. Izuku sighed and faced the rest of the heroes, mentally preparing for the chewing out he was about to receive. Izuku walked alone, more dejected than ever. After no less than 4 heroes and the police had given him a lecture on how irresponsible and dangerous what he did was, he was sent on his way. Kaken yelled at him, saying he didn't need his help and to stay out of his way. Even the sun's final rays, his favorite time of the day, washing over him could not help his mood. He walked slowly towards his home, feeling sorry for himself. "I am here." Izuku looked up. There, in all his glory, was All Might. "I need to thank Dash." All Might suddenly stopped, his mouth spewing blood as he shrank to his true form. "Are you okay?" Izuku yelped. All Might nodded, coughing for a few more moments, before continuing. "Young man, I need to thank you. You reminded me of the responsibility heroes have to risk their lives, regardless of what their quirk is. So for that reason, I must retract what I said earlier. Izuku looked up at him, tears streaming down his face. You can become a hero. And I don't think you're as quirkless as you believe. At Izuku's puzzled face, he explained. That air blast wasn't just made by me. You have incredible strength for a quirkless kid, albeit uncontrolled. I can help you with that. Izuku was shocked. No one had ever said something that nice to him. What was his angle? What did he gain from this? Why should he? Hey! Izuku looked at All Might, who was in his full size before he collapsed back again. That's a little creepy. But if you're wondering what my angle is, I can't just leave someone with a quirk that powerful alone without teaching him a few things about control. You could flatten a building if you're not careful, he said. Izuku nodded, a great smile on his lips. Now straighten up, it's bad for your back to hunch. All Might looked at him, a smile on his normal form for the first time. Now, tell me what your name is. Izuku looked at his idol, appreciation covering his face. Izuku Midoriya. What? All Might stared at the kid in front of him. This boy is young Midoriya? He thought incredulously. Now that he was looking, he could recognize the emerald curls and freckled cheeks he had come to know during his brief visits to his house all those years ago. He could tell Izuku didn't remember him, and his mother had obviously never told him. Ah, I see. She didn't want young Midoriya here to go and brag about knowing me. Even if they didn't believe him, they would tell people. Eventually, someone would believe and go after him. Very wise Inko, I will honor your wish. All Might? Are you okay? The green-haired teen said worriedly. The lanky blonde shook his head around a few times before replying. Yes, I just had a friend named Izuku many years ago. Nothing to worry about young Midoriya, he said, clenching a fist. Izuku nodded, a confused look on his face. Sheet, he's just as sharp as ever. All Might sat down on the curb, motioning for Izuku to do the same. The boy hurried to his side, looking up at All Might through his thick hair. You know Dagoba Municipal Beach, young Midoriya? Izuku nodded his head. All right, meet me there tomorrow at 5. All Might said. Izuku stuttered. You want to be a hero, don't you? Izuku straightened his back and clenched his jaw, not saying anything. I thought so. I'll see you then. All Might said, standing up. Izuku quickly followed. Well, have a good night, young Midoriya. I'm sure your mother is worried about you. Izuku widened his eyes. Crap, you're right. I need to go. He ran a few steps before turning around and giving All Might a bear hug, surprising him. Thank you, All Might, he said before he took off down the road, dust in his wake. Diamin, that kid has a strong grip. All Might thought, smiling. He sighed. I should probably give his mother a call explaining what happened. Delaying will only make it worse. He sighed again, making his way over to a dark blue Mustang. At his home, Izuku was crying, telling his mother that he had a quirk. Izuku ran to Dagoba Beach, bursting with excitement. At last, he thought. I'm on my way to becoming a hero. He slowed down as he neared the beach, noticing the mountains of trash. As he was walking down the sidewalk, he noticed a dark blue car parked by the curb. It was the most peculiar car he had seen in a while. He walked around it, admiring its simple curves before he noticed a silver horse emblazoned on the grille. A Mustang? But that's an American car, which means this car must belong to Dash. I am here. Izuku spun around. It was All Might in a dark blue tracksuit, matching the car behind Izuku. Yes, that's my car. I had it replicated from old designs, he said, grinning. They walked over to a clear area on the beach, stopping at the shore. Now, before we get started, I want to gauge your power level, All Might said. How will we do that? Izuku asked, growing nervous. Well, what I normally do to activate my quirk is clench my butt cheeks and yell, smash. All Might roared, punching the air as he did so, creating a powerful gust of wind at the ocean, waves rising on either side. Izuku was amazed. Now you do it, All Might said in his true form, coughing up blood. Izuku nodded nervously. How can I do something like that? That's amazing. Surely, yesterday was a fluke. I couldn't have done that. I'm quirkless, useless. Young Midoriya, you are thinking too much. Don't. Just breathe in and do it. All Might stated. Izuku looked at him for a moment, before looking back at the ocean. The sun was starting to come up. Its first rays hit Izuku, and his resolve hardened. His fingers closed into a fist, and he shoved it forward. Smash! A whirlwind of air boomed from Izuku's knuckles, a cyclone of air extending for dozens of miles, massive waves racing away from the center. Around him, the trash was blown even further away, and All Might braced himself in his hero form. Holy shit, young Midoriya. Just where the hell did you come from? He thought. Izuku blinked. The sand was gone from around him, leaving him knee-deep in the water rushing in. He looked at All Might, who was in a similar situation. He yelped. He could see through All Might and noticed black streaks in him, coming from his scar and moving towards his heart. Izuku blinked hard, and his vision was normal again. I'm sorry, All Might, Izuku stammered, only to hear laughter booming from the man's lips. Holy! Stinking! Super crap! He clenched his fist, shrinking down again. Young Midoriya, that was amazing. You just might have one of the strongest quirks I've ever seen. He looked down at the teen, who was now blushing at the praise. Now, I want you to clean the rest of the beach, including the stuff you blew away. But there's a catch. He ran to his car, flinging the door open and pulling out 2 pairs of large cuffs. When activated, these things will increase the gravity exerted on you by 20-fold. They were made by my old friend David Shield, he said, handing them over. Izuku stared at them in amazement before slipping them on his wrists and ankles. When the cuffs clicked closed, his arms and legs suddenly felt a fraction heavier. I thought they'd be heavier. He thought, standing up straight. He's even stronger than I thought. Those things used to weigh even me down, and that was when I was at full strength. All Might thought, a grin forming on his face. All right, young Midoriya, you have 4 hours to clear this entire beach. Set the trash in the landfill 8 miles down the road. He raised a hand at Izuku's open mouth. You can do it. Don't think about it too hard. Go beyond what you think you are capable of. Izuku looked up at him and nodded. He clenched his fists and smiled. Plus ultra. 1 hour later. Izuku was a blur, picking up huge chunks of trash and speeding towards the landfill. All Might watched him, shocked that he managed to get the chunks there that fast without dropping one piece. They weren't connected by any real means, only in contact with each other, but they might as well be welded together. What the hell, young Midoriya? When did you get so cool? All Might thought, standing up. Izuku was almost finished, one giant pile after the other finding their way to the junkyard, confusing the poor guard there. Izuku finally slid to a stop before All Might, his clothes in tatters from the speed. He walked up to All Might, a puzzled look on his face. I thought you said by 20-fold, he said. They did, young Midoriya. I will just have to ask David to up the weight. All Might said, looking at Izuku before walking to his car. All right, let's go, he said, getting in. Izuku took off the cuffs and hopped in the passenger seat, admiring the polished interior. Where are we going? He asked. All Might grinned at him. Why UA? Izuku asked after spending a few minutes staring forward in excitement. All Might's Mustang was fast, roaring along the road next to the now clear coastline. I did all this. Izuku thought in amazement, mile after mile of uninterrupted shoreline proof of what he did. You know those rumors of me going to UA to teach? He nodded at All Might, who was grinning ear to ear. They're true. He laughed at Izuku's dumbstruck face. Why? Izuku finally asked. Well, I thought it was about time I taught you youngsters a thing or two. He looked at Izuku for a moment, then said, I chose a good year to come. He chuckled. Now quiet. I need to pay attention to the road, he said as he swerved around someone going the speed limit. After 15 minutes, All Might and Izuku arrived at UA back entrance, the latter of who was currently staring wide-eyed at the houses they were passing by. All Might explained each one was for a teacher at UA, so they wouldn't have to go far for classes. They finally stopped at the one on the end. Its first floor was brick, the second being tan concrete. They drove up the driveway to a large garage in the back of the house, 2 other vintage cars sitting in alcoves. Something sat under a black tarp in the corner. Young Midoriya, the entrance exam is in 10 months. During this time here in my home you will be doing one of 2 things. All Might said, a grave look on his face. The first is learning to control your strength and studying. You live in a world made of paper, and its inhabitants are decidedly less sturdy than that. He walked over to the thing under the tarp. The second is using this. He lifted the tarp, revealing a strange contraption. Don't ask me how because I don't know, but this machine is capable of putting great force upon the user. Another David Shield special. All Might said. How much force? Izuku asked. All Might grinned. Theoretically? Billions of tons. All Might cracked his knuckles. All right, young Midoriya, get in. Izuku clambered into the machine, his arms and legs automatically strapped in. Ready? Izuku nodded, and All Might activated the machine. At first, Izuku felt nothing. Then a weight heavier than Izuku had ever felt before slammed into him, nearly crushing him into a ball. Izuku strained with all his might against the machine, eventually pushing his arms and legs out to their original positions. That's 800 million tons of force pressing down on you. How do you feel? All Might asked. Good. Izuku croaked out. All right, keep pushing. I'll see you in 3 hours. All Might said, turning around and opening the hood of one of his cars, intending to tinker with it. Izuku stared at him, not noticing his arms slowly caving in from the weight. 3 hours? I don't know if I can do that. Go plus ultra, young Midoriya. All Might said from underneath his red charger. Izuku's resolve hardened, and his arms flew back into place. Right. He thought. Plus ultra. The next 10 months were living hell, and Izuku loved it. Every afternoon he ran to Dagoba Beach, where he met All Might, who drove him to UA in one of his muscle cars, though it was usually the Mustang. There, he would be put into the machine for 3 hours, his entire body on fire from the strain. Afterward, he would study and focus on controlling his strength by holding an egg, squeezing just under what was needed to shatter it. After he told All Might about the weird X-ray vision, he helped him train that too. He was now able to hold 100 billion tons of force somewhat effortlessly for 3 hours straight. At the rate he was going, he would surpass All Might's record of 150 billion tons within the year. All Might was amazed at how strong the teen was, and how intelligent he had proven himself. One day he had brought his notebooks, and upon All Might's inquiry, Izuku was given situations to analyze and assess, working his mind as much as his body. The situations usually had 1 or 2 heroes against bad odds, but Izuku was always able to think of a situation in which they would win, usually with 1 or 2 backup plans in case the first failed. At the end of the 10 months, All Might showed Izuku a picture of himself before he started. He had packed on muscle, no longer able to hide it as well, and had grown, standing at 6 feet 1 inch, 185 centimeters. His confidence grew at the same time as his body, albeit at a much slower rate. He still kept to himself, but now stood up straight, no longer as afraid. Thankfully, Kakin and the rest of the class left him alone after the incident. His transformation had been nothing short of amazing, but the real test was still to come. One day before entrance exams. Young Midoriya, I believe your body is more than prepared for your entrance exam, All Might said, sliding from underneath his yellow Camaro. Izuku blushed, heat rising to his cheeks as All Might walked over to him. Death Arms and Gunhead are ambushed by Bane on trigger, what should they do? All Might asked. Izuku thought for a minute, before replying clearly. Death Arms should engage Bane, distracting him so Gunhead can get behind him and shoot the tube on his back. If Bane anticipates that, Gunhead should also engage. They should both hit him as fast as possible and try to disconnect his trigger tube. All Might grinned. And so is your mind. You can go home early, young Midoriya, you've earned it. He said. Izuku grinned as well, giving his mentor a quick hug before he was gone, now able to control his speed to where he didn't burn his clothes off. He stopped several blocks from his house, walking the rest of the way normally. His mom got noise complaints when he ran through his neighborhood and into his apartment. Izuku stopped in front of it now, fishing for his keys and opening the door to see his mother with her hands on her hips and an angry look in her eye. Mom? What is it?" he asked, closing the door behind him. His mother took a deep breath and looked him in the eye, her own blazing with worry. "Why didn't you tell me you and Bakugo had a falling out?" Mom? What is it?" he asked, closing the door behind him. His mother took a deep breath and looked him in the eye, her own blazing with worry. "Why didn't you tell me you and Bakugo had a falling out?" Izuku froze. How did she find out about that? He thought. "What do you mean, Mom?" he said, laughing nervously. His mom narrowed his eyes. "Don't play dumb with me, young man. I called Bakugo's mom. She says he hasn't talked to you in months." She said, "We just had a falling out. He's arrogant and rude to me and everyone else around him." Izuku retorted, shying away when she took a step forward. "Don't you use that tone with me. And if he isn't hanging out with you, who is?" Izuku looked down. "No one," he said quietly. At this, the anger drained from his mom's face and she ran over, tears in her eyes. She embraced him, and Izuku finally let the loneliness from the past 10 years out, waterfalls gushing from his eyes. It took them a while to calm down, a puddle forming around them. His mom wiped her eyes. "You can tell me these things, all right?" Izuku nodded, a small smile on his face. "I'm all right, Mom. Besides, I have all might dash." Izuku clamped his mouth shut in horror. His mom's head turned like a pedestal, her forest green eyes boring into Izuku's. "What do you mean by that?" she asked icily, making Izuku shiver. He quickly explained everything that happened in the last 10 months, including how he saved Bakugo. His mom sat silently the whole time, asking for clarifications here and there. When Izuku finished, his mother was still as stone. "Stay exactly where you are. I need to make a phone call," she said, getting up and going to her room. For his part, Izuku stayed as still as a statue. "This is it. I'm going to die tonight," he thought. "Tashinori Yagi, just who the hell do you think you are?" Izuku sat upright. He could hear his mother, faintly, through the heavy door. "How am I doing this?" he thought, wondering if he should listen in on her. He shrugged, figuring he needed as much help as he could get to survive the night. Izuku focused his senses, casting them far out before he zeroed in on his mother's voice. "You listen here. You had no right at all to do that without permission. Why didn't you tell me?" "Shut up. I want to hear it in person. Be here in 10 minutes, I know you know where we live." Izuku sat up straight again, looking anywhere but his mother as she walked back in. She sat on the couch, anger lighting her entire face up. Izuku was about to say something when he put a finger to his lips. "Not now," she said, venom dripping from her voice. Izuku straightened his back even further, not daring to try to say anything else. The two of them stared at the door, waiting for someone to come through. All Might was having a good day. Young Midoriya had progressed far beyond what he thought capable. "His quirk is amazing. If I had it 5 years ago," he thought before shaking his head. No need to worry about the past. That statement was ironic, seeing how much time he had spent the last 10 months agonizing about how to tell Inko about his mentorship of her son. Every time he worked up the courage to call her and tell her about it, his resolve crumbled, and he was back at square one. But other than that, things were going great for All Might. He was getting along with his coworkers just fine and had adjusted as well as he could into his new role. He was eating dinner when his phone rang. He grabbed at it and froze, staring at the ID. It was Inko. It took a big gulp before answering. He was met by swearing, almost bursting his eardrum. "Sheet," the kid told her. He thought. She ended her tirade by demanding he come to their house. All Might sighed and stood up. "Time to face the music," he said to no one. No time to take a car, he'd need to go fast. He groaned. He already spent most of his 3-hour limit. "I'll just have to make it work," All Might thought before he walked to his front lawn. He grew to his full size, leaping in the air towards his pupil's house. There was a knock on the door. His mom got up and answered it, revealing All Might. Izuku's mouth dropped open. Shush, I'll answer your questions before long. His mother said. She looked back at All Might. Come in. All Might closed the door behind him, a somber grin on his face. His mom sat back on the couch, staring at All Might, who shrugged. I'll break anything I sit on. He said quietly. Fine. So you've been training my son? All Might nodded. Has he gotten hurt? She asked, worry etched on her face. Not once. All Might said. Young Midoriya has the strongest quirk I've ever seen. He's far stronger than I ever was, even before my injury sheet. Izuku's mom looked at All Might worriedly. What do you mean injury? All Might sighed. Might as well tell her. He shrank to his true form in a cloud of steam, lifting his shirt to reveal his gruesome scar. Happened 5 years ago. I've been weakening ever since, he said, sitting in a chair now that he was smaller. You don't know when to quit, do you, Toshi? Inko said, wiping tears from her eyes. I wouldn't have gotten where I am now if I did. Toshi retorted, smiling. Izuku stared at the two of them, eyes as big as dinner plates. Are All Might and my mom teasing each other? He thought incredulously. He coughed, making them look at him. Can someone explain to me what's going on? He asked. Well, Izuku, All Might was kind enough to let us into his home when you were young. We stayed with him a couple of months before I got back on my feet. His mom said. At this, Izuku's eyes widened even further. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because then you would have told somebody else. All Might rumbled. And why didn't you tell me you knew me, All Might? Izuku said, sounding hurt. Because I was scared of her. All Might said sheepishly, pointing at his mother, who grinned at his response. Young Midoriya, my real name is Toshinori Yagi. I'm going to ask you to use my name while I'm in this form. It's been a long time since people have used my name. I don't like it. Toshinori said, looking at Izuku. The boy hurriedly nodded. I know All Might's secret identity, he thought. For the next hour, his mom and All Might Toshinori told him tales from his childhood. It was late when Toshinori stood up stretching. Well, it was great catching up with you, Inko. Good luck on the exam tomorrow, young Midoriya. I'll be watching. He grew into his full size for a second, before he collapsed to his knees, coughing up blood before shrinking. Both Midoriyas were by his side in an instant. He's at his limit for the day, Izuku said worryingly. His mom sat for a second, thinking. You can spend the night on the couch, at least until you recuperate your strength, Toshi. She said. The skinny blonde looked at both of them before nodding. He stood up, bowing. Thank you, young Midoriya and Inko. They said their goodnights and walked into their rooms. Toshinori turned out the light and laid down on the couch. Of all the boys in the world to save me, it would be yours, Inko. He thought before he closed his eyes, sleeping well for the first time in years. Izuku stood in front of the gate to you, waiting for it to open. I can't believe it, he thought. I'm going to get a chance to go to UA. He had been waiting for this chance for years. Ever since he first saw that video of All Might, it had been his dream to go to the school that shaped the living legend into the hero he was today. While he had been on UA's campus in secret for the past 10 months, it was different. It was one thing to travel in the back, never speaking to anyone. It was an entirely different monster to be able to walk through the front gate as a would-be student. What the hell are you doing here? Izuku looked over and saw a familiar ashen-haired teen stomping over to him. I'm here to take the exam, same as you, Bakugo, Izuku said dryly. His clearing off the beach and subsequent training under All Might had done wonders for his confidence. He was now able to hold a conversation with someone without stuttering once, and his stammering had all but vanished. At least until a hero showed up anyway. Why? You don't even have a quirk. Wait, what the hell did you just call me? The fiery boy's trade was cut short, confusion dancing in his eyes. Izuku rolled his eyes. Your name is Bakugo, isn't it? He asked. Bakugo seemed to get even angrier at that, his fingers crackling with explosions. Before he could do anything stupid, the gate to the campus opened. Bakugo instead chose to shoot Izuku a dismissive snort. Whatever, Deku, just stay out of my way or I'll kill you. Izuku stared after him. Kill me? Really? Whatever. Today is the day I start on my hero journey. Izuku thought, stepping confidently forward and tripping on his shoelaces. Or I'll just die. Izuku was suddenly stopped halfway through his descent, then put upright. Are you okay? I don't usually use my quirk on people without permission, but you weren't stopping yourself, and it'd be bad luck if you fell right. Izuku looked over. Holding on to his arm was a girl with chestnut brown hair and rose-tinted cheeks. You're going to be applying to the hero program too, huh? Good luck, she said, before running towards the entrance. Izuku was red-faced, still staring at where the short girl had been. I talked to a girl, he thought. He didn't actually talk to her. Izuku shook his head and ran inside, eager to face the challenges Yue offered. Izuku arrived in the auditorium for the practical exam and found his spot. I think I did well on the written, he thought brightly. But the real test was the practical. The examinees weren't allowed to know what it was, and the older students were sworn to secrecy. It was one of the best-kept secrets in the world. Even All Might didn't tell him when he asked, and that was saying something. He was terrible at keeping secrets. He only hid the truth from Izuku for so long because he was afraid of his mom. I thought I told you to stay out of the way. Deku. Izuku looked over at the red-eyed teen, who was now sitting next to him. Hey, Bakugo, Izuku said tiredly. Shut up, you FNG nerd, Kaken said. More teens were piling in, the auditorium slowly filling. On the stage stood a guy with flamboyant blonde hair and glasses. Izuku gaped at him. That's Present Mike. His quirk is voice, he can increase his voice exponentially. Shame his quirk doesn't work through the ground. I bet if he got amplifiers. I said shut up nerd. Kaken said crossly. Izuku realized he had been muttering again, people around him staring. Sorry, he said embarrassedly. I thought I had it under control. Welcome examinees. Present Mike yelled. Can I get a hey? The entire auditorium was silent. Tough crowd. Listen up, here's the practical exam. You will be facing robots worth points ranging from 1 to 3. You will have 1 hour to destroy as many as you can. Attacking your fellow examinees will result in instant disqualification. Present Mike roared, any questions? A tall blue-haired boy with glasses raised his hand. Sir, you said the points range from 1 to 3, yet there are 4 machines in this handout. This is UA, the #1 hero school in Japan. A slip-up like this would be unbecoming of your status. And you. He swung around, pointing his finger at Izuku. You've been muttering this whole time. It's creeping people out. Are you sure you're serious enough for UA? He asked. Izuku straightened in his chair indignantly. It wasn't even that much. The teen turned back to Present Mike. That was awkward. To answer your first question, there is a 4th robot worth 0 points. It's to be avoided, treat it like a building. He said, and the blue-haired teen nodded, apologizing profusely. Now, go to the buses that corresponds to the letter on your slip. You won't find any friendly faces, to prevent teaming. Present Mike said. The examinees streamed out of the auditorium. Izuku climbed into the bus going to test Site B and sat in the back. The tension on the bus was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Everyone knew they had only one chance to make an impression. They arrived at the gates to test Site B and Izuku marveled at their size. This is why they're the best in the world, Izuku thought. He noticed the girl from earlier was also there, and he started to walk toward her, intending to say thank you. He was stopped by a familiar boy with glasses. What do you think you're doing? Can't you see she's trying to focus? He got close to Izuku. Are you here just to sabotage the rest of us? He demanded. Izuku blinked confusedly at the sudden interruption. What? He said. No, I'm not. The boy backed off. Then act like it. You may be a big guy, and I don't know your quirk, but that attitude won't get you anywhere in life. Izuku narrowed his eyes dangerously. That's it. For your information dash. Always start. The gate opened, and the more focused of the teens took off into the mock city. The rest stared at Present Mike. What? You don't get a countdown in real life. Go. Sheet, I'm behind. Izuku thought, and took off running, not realizing he vastly outpaced his fellow competitors in an instant. He found a robot worth 2 points and drove his fist into it, shattering it beyond repair. He looked around with the X-ray vision he and All Might had refined, noticing more robots in the alleyways. He tore through them, destroying over 100 robots in the next 50 minutes. He stopped with a skid on the main street. 1 minute remaining, Present Mike roared. "I hope I got enough," he thought. A massive boom interrupted his thoughts. Down the street, a titanic robot had emerged. It barely fit in the buildings, knocking debris down around it. The other examinees, including the kid with glasses, were running for their lives. It was the zero-pointer. "I don't need to fight this thing," Izuku thought, already turning. A scream stopped him dead in his tracks. He spun around and saw the chestnut-haired girl who helped him before trapped under some rubble. The zero-pointer raised its fist, intending to bring it down on the helpless girl. Izuku froze. What should he do? They wouldn't kill a student. But this was UA. Anything can happen. Time seemed to move in slow motion. He closed his eyes, not wanting to see the first girl who was nice to him get crushed. Izuku knew he wouldn't get there in time. It wasn't possible. Go beyond what you think is possible. Izuku opened his eyes, and twin beams of energy erupted from them, cutting the arm off the robot's shoulder as it swung it back. It fell to the ground with a boom. The second it did, Izuku leaped into the air, breaking the sound barrier. He slammed his fist up into its chest. Smash! The behemoth was lifted off its feet, flying back until it hit the far wall, exploding in a massive plume of fire. Izuku hung in the air for a second, shocked, before he began to fall face first. "Oh crap, this isn't going to be pretty," he thought, putting his arms forward. At the last second, before he made an Izuku-shaped crater, a slap cracked out across his face. Immediately Izuku stopped, floating in midair. He looked over at the girl who had saved him earlier. She barely managed a garbled release before she threw up. Izuku dropped the few inches with a thud, shocked. He launched himself up and ripped the debris off of the girl. He smiled at her. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yeah, but I think my ankle's broken," she said, wincing. Izuku helped her up. "I guess we're even then, huh?" she said, laughing a bit. Izuku smiled weakly, statistically about to say something incredibly stupid, when Present Mick's voice ripped out over the stadium. "Time's up." Everyone returned to the entrance. "Good job, people." 1 week later, Izuku sat on the couch, staring up at the ceiling. It had been 1 week from the exam, and he hadn't heard anything from All Might. At first, he was confident he had passed, but now seeds of doubt sprang forth. "I destroyed a lot of robots, but what if there was more to it?" he thought before he stood up. "I need to do something." He got on the ground, doing push-ups faster than the eye could see. It took a lot of push-ups to tire him out now. He was in the tens of thousands when his mother burst in. "Izuku," came. "It's a letter from Yue," she said, holding it out to him. Izuku grabbed it and was in his room in seconds, his mother pacing outside. He looked at the letter for a few minutes. "This is it," he thought. He ripped open the envelope, revealing a circular medal. It sat on his desk for a moment before it lit up on the wall, revealing All Might in his full form. "I am here as a projection," he said. "Young Midoriya, you did well on the written exam, but the practical is where you shined," he said, grinning ear to ear. "You scored 228 villain points in the practical exam, already giving you the #1 position," he exclaimed. "If that was the only thing we were scoring." A clip played then, showing the chestnut-haired girl talking to Present Mike, saying she'd give some of her points to Izuku if he didn't have enough. "Your sentiment is heard, but not necessary, dear listener," Present Mike exclaimed joyfully. The projection switched back to All Might. "Let me ask you a question. What kind of hero school wouldn't reward someone for true acts of heroism?" All Might grinned even wider. "None of them, and especially not Yue," he said. "For saving your peer, young Midoriya, you have been given an extra 40 rescue points. Your total is 268, the highest ever recorded." Izuku sat there in shock, not believing what he heard. First? No, there must be some mistake. There is no mistake, young Midoriya. You earned that spot. All Might said sternly, knowing what his pupil would be thinking. Additionally, your peer was also given 45 points for saving you, placing her in 3rd place. All Might said before he turned to face someone off camera. I have to do how many of these? Sheesh. He looked back at Izuku. I will see you at UA, young Midoriya. Plus Ultra. The projector turned off. Izuku stared at it, certain he was dreaming. There's no way. There's just no way. He thought over and over. He heard a knock. Izuku, are you okay? His mom asked. He walked over to the door and opened it, tears on his face. I got in, Mom, he whispered. His mom surged forward and embraced him, the two of them on the floor sobbing. I got in. I got in. I'm going to be a hero. Izuku said. Izuku ran to Dagoba Beach as the sun was going down, tears streaming from his eyes. He ran to the spot where he had first learned of his quirk and saw a lanky blonde standing there. All Might, he yelled. At this, a couple not far away from them perked their heads up. All Might? Where? They asked. Crap. Tell them you got it wrong. Toshinori whispered, not turning. But I got it wrong. Izuku stammered out hurriedly. Dang. I wanted to see All Might. One of them said before they turned around. Toshinori let out a sigh and looked down at Izuku. He grinned. So you got in? Izuku nodded, eyes alit with happiness. Toshinori put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. I knew you would, young Midoriya. You can keep coming to my home for your training, but try to take it easy, will you? We can't have you gassing out before you even start, he said. Izuku looked at Toshinori, reluctance in his gaze before he nodded. All right, Toshinori, he said. Toshinori nodded and turned around, walking back to his dark blue Mustang. If that's it, I'll be going home now. We'll work on that new quirk of yours tomorrow, he said. Wait! Izuku cried out. Toshinori looked back at him. Mom's cooking pork cutlet for dinner. Want to join us? He asked nervously. Toshinori stared. Should I? He thought. It's obviously a celebration. Would I be welcome? I'm sure Mom would love it if you came. I haven't seen her look so happy in years. Izuku said helpfully. Toshinori looked unsure. Well, if you're sure it's okay, I will come, he said. I need to talk to her about him anyway. Toshinori thought. He looked down at himself. I don't look very good, maybe I should go freshen up, he said, growing to his full size. Wait, All Might is here. Yeah, let's go get an autograph. Izuku and Toshinori froze. Double crap. Let's go, young Midoriya. The two of them turned around and bolted to Toshinori's Mustang. It roared awake and sped towards Izuku's home, freshening up Forgotten. Inko leaned against the counter and sighed. She had just finished the pork cutlets for Izuku's celebration dinner. Now she just needed to wait for him. He had run off, promising to be back soon. She knew he was going to see Toshi. She hated to admit it, but the blonde had been good for her son. He had given her freckled son hope for the first time in years. I haven't always been supportive of his dream to become a hero, she thought, remembering when Izuku was first diagnosed quirkless. She knew he had held great power within him, but hadn't told him the truth about him, worried that learning he wasn't biologically her son would damage his relationship with her. It was selfish, Inko thought. Mom, we're home, Izuku called out. Oh, he did not, Inko thought as she turned the corner, revealing Izuku and a nervous-looking Toshinori. Inko recoiled in surprise. It was still a shock to see the giant of a man so weak-looking. She recovered and glared at Toshinori. He held up his hands. He made me come, he said, pointing at Izuku. Now it was the green-haired teen's turn to wilt under his mother's gaze. Is that true? She asked. Izuku nodded rapidly, his head a green blur. Inko sighed. Fine. Toshi, make yourself useful and help me set the table, she said, turning around and walking back to the kitchen. Toshinori hurriedly followed her, grabbing the napkins and utensils. After he set the table, both he and Izuku sat down, looking nervously at each other. Inko walked in with the pork cutlet. Setting it down, she said, "I hope I have enough for both you and Izuku Toshi." The latter of the two chuckled. "My years of eating obscene amounts of food are behind me, I'm afraid." Toshinori patted the side where his scar was located. "Having only half of my digestive tract is to blame for that." Inko blinked, tears welling in her eyes. "Don't talk about it like that. You make it sound as if you're resigned to dying," she said, her voice catching in her throat. Toshinori looked at her worriedly. "I'm sorry, Miss Midoriya, I will try not to speak like that," Toshinori said, resolving never to bring up his injury around her. It was a simple fact that he was dying, and he needed to pass it on pretty soon. Inko wiped her tears away. "Thank you. Let's eat." They spent the rest of the dinner making small talk. Toshinori told first-hand accounts of his battles to a wide-eyed Izuku while Inko smiled, taking in the sight before her. Her son had never been so happy as he had been in the past 10 months, and it was due to Toshi. Inko felt her heart swell with gratitude towards the man that had helped her all those years ago. She felt something in her chest, something she had not felt in a long time. Not since Hisashi. Nope. Not happening. Cannot be happening. She thought, standing up. "I'm going to do the dishes," she said. Toshinori grabbed his and Izuku's plate. "I'll help you," he said. "What kind of guest would I be if I didn't help in some way?" he said at her glare. She was about to retort when she looked into his eyes. "Fine." She relented. Inko went to the kitchen, Toshinori following. "I'll wash you dry," she said. He nodded and got into place. For a minute neither of them said anything. "What did you want to talk to me about?" Inko finally said. Toshinori looked at her. "I want to tell him," he said simply. Inko stared at him for a moment before answering. "Why?" "Because he deserves to know the truth," Toshinori said calmly. "You haven't told him yet, for what reason I don't know, but it's past time he knew." Inko took a deep breath. Toshi was right. She just hoped that Izuku would understand. She looked at Toshi, who was staring at her expectantly, dishes long forgotten. "Fine," she said quietly. Toshi grinned at that, and the two of them went back to cleaning. In a few minutes, they were finished. The duo walked back to the dining table, where a guilty-looking Izuku was sitting. Toshinori looked at him curiously, until he realized what happened. "You listened in on our talk, didn't you?" he said, pointing a finger at the freckled teen. Izuku nodded, looking down at the table. Inko stared at the two for a moment before she turned to Izuku, outrage on her face. "Izuku, that is very rude. Promise me you won't do it again," his mom said. Izuku nodded silently, still staring at the hardwood in front of him. Inko sighed. She had wanted to collect her thoughts before she talked to him, but that was no longer an option. Instead, she sat down across from him. Toshi sat in between them, waiting for her to start. She sighed again. This isn't going to be easy, Inko thought before she opened her mouth to speak. "Izuku, did I ever tell you I was a sidekick?" Izuku's head shot up and looked at her, disbelief in his eyes. My name was Callback, and I was a sidekick to Black Canary," she said, her gaze softening as she talked about her old boss and mentor. She had a set of lungs that rivaled present Mike. She said softly. Izuku stared at her, entrapped. "What happened? Why aren't you a sidekick now?" he said, awe in his voice as he saw his mother in a new light. "One day Black Canary and I were called in to fight a particularly strong villain. We fought hard, but he was too much. He killed her, and would have killed me if not for Toshi here. During the fight, I pushed my quirk farther than it had any right to go. As a result, it was permanently damaged. It's why I can only attract small objects to myself." Inko finished, pain evident on her face. It was then that Toshinori decided to interject. "She sells herself short, young Midoriya. If she hadn't held that demon back, I would have had a much harder time fighting him." He rumbled, looking at Inko with gratitude. She smiled at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Izuku looked at the two of them, suspicion on his face for a moment before it was replaced with a confused one. "But what does this have to do with me?" he asked. Inko took a drink of water before replying. A week after the fight, I was driving down a road late at night when a strange craft fell out of the sky, nearly hitting me. I texted Toshi, asking him to come to help me, and then I went to the ship. Inko took a deep breath. This is it, she thought. Inside of that thing was you. Izuku stared at her for a long time, attempting to speak. It can't be true, can it? I'm her son, I'm her son. Izuku thought helplessly over and over. He finally spoke. So I'm not your son? He said, pain in his voice. Inko's face hardened. She got up and pulled him into a tight embrace, tears falling freely from both of them. You are my son, she said fiercely. The fact that I didn't give birth to you means nothing. I have raised you for 15 years, and I'm proud of the man you're becoming. She pulled back from him, staring him in the eyes. I love you, Izuku. Nothing can change that. Toshinori sat quietly, smiling at the exchange. That went about as well as it could have. He thought. The pair had finally calmed down, and Izuku looked over at Toshinori, a thoughtful look on his gaze. Where did I come from? He asked. We don't know. As far as the world is concerned, Miss Midoriya didn't know she was expecting you and gave birth to you a few months later. All Might explained, crossing his arms. We suspect your origin may be the reason for your strength and other abilities. He leaned back in his chair. We'll talk about your newest one tomorrow. Izuku nodded, and all was quiet in the Midoriya household for the first time that evening. The three of them sat there, enjoying each other's company. Izuku asked his mom about her life as a sidekick, to which Inko happily answered. After a while, Toshinori stood up. It's time I went home. I will see you tomorrow at Dagoba Beach, young Midoriya. Izuku got up and hugged him, surprising both of the adults. Thank you. For everything, he said before he went to his room. Inko looked at Toshinori. Does he do that often? She asked, raising one eyebrow. Toshinori chuckled. Not often enough. He's a good hugger, he said, a small grin on his face. Inko smiled back. I'll walk you out, she said, the smile never leaving her face. Toshinori nodded, walking with her to the front door. Before he left, he turned around and looked at her. Thank you, Miss Midoriya. You did well in telling him, he said, clasping his hands in front of him. Inko looked at him playfully, her emerald eyes boring into his blue ones. Just call me Inko, Toshi. I think we're good enough friends to be past formality by now, she said, a smile brighter than the sun on her face. Why did I say that? She thought. Toshinori blinked. All right, Miss Inko. Good night, he said. Good night, Toshi. Please watch my son. I know I shouldn't worry, but it's my job too, she said, blinking hard as tears threatened to spill over again. Toshinori nodded. I will, Inko, he said solemnly. Inko smiled, then closed the door. He walked back to his car, a weird feeling in his chest. I should let Recovery Girl check me out. My condition could be getting worse, he thought, getting in his Mustang and driving home. The next day, Izuku walked to Dagoba Beach the next morning, a radiant smile on his lips. He going to you and now, nothing could bring him down. He took off into a run, moving faster than the eye could see. He was at the beach in seconds, where a lanky man leaned on a red Charger. Decide to change it up today? Izuku asked playfully. It's been a while since I drove Cass. She needed it, Toshinori retorted. Izuku rolled his eyes. Toshinori insisted on calling his cars she. That's what they used to call them. He would say, who they were was never answered. He treated each car like it was a person, naming each one. The red Charger's full name was Cassandra, the yellow Camaro's name was Bee, and the dark blue Mustang's name was Eleanor. He treated the cars better than he treated himself. It was one of his few passions, another being training Izuku. They got into Cass and sped off, the beach passing in a blur. Izuku noticed that people had left trash out and made a mental note to get it as he came back. Within 10 minutes they were at UA's back entrance. Toshinori nodded at the camera at the gate before he sped through it. Izuku wondered how many people knew about Toshinori's condition. Recovery Girl for sure knew, but who else? He thought as they pulled into Toshinori's driveway. You know the drill, Toshinori said as they clambered out. Izuku nodded. He walked over to the machine and climbed in, straps automatically closing around his wrists and ankles. Ready? Toshinori asked, and Izuku nodded. He activated the machine, and it began working, exerting force upwards of 100 billion tons upon Izuku's entire body. Toshinori made sure his pupil was all right, before he slid under B, preparing to change the oil. Izuku was there for 3 hours, sweat rolling off of him. At the end of the time, Toshinori walked up and shut the contraption off, freeing Izuku. He sat on the ground panting. How much was that? He asked. Toshinori looked at the screen that controlled the machine. 103 billion tons. He said in awe. Young Midoriya is just getting stronger. What's his upper limit? He thought. Toshinori walked over to Izuku and held out his hand, pulling Izuku up. Good job, young Midoriya, he said as Izuku blushed. We need to test out this new quirk of yours, he said, walking out of his garage. Izuku followed, suddenly nervous. He started muttering, hand on his chin. I don't even know what I did. There were other people there, right? One of them must have cut the thing's arm off. It couldn't have been me. I'm only strong, right? Young Midoriya, look at this. Toshinori ripped Izuku from his thoughts to show him his phone. On it was a close-up of Izuku with twin beams of crimson energy bursting through his eyes. Izuku stared at it. Holy crap, I did that. Toshinori put his phone away and led Izuku to his backyard. It was spacious, with a pool and deck. At the back, a target had been set up on the massive metal walls that surrounded the campus. All right, young Midoriya, I want you to stare at the center of the target and remember what you felt when you used it last week, Toshinori said, backing up to a makeshift barricade behind Izuku. Izuku nodded and closed his eyes, thinking about the day of the entrance exam. He remembered the exhilaration of finally being able to test his strength, but nothing happened. He looked inside himself further. He remembered that chestnut-haired girl and the terror he felt when he saw her under the rubble, about to get crushed. If I didn't get there in time, he thought, anger rising in him. He felt a sharp pain behind his eyes. He opened them and the twin beams of crimson erupted from them, blasting into the center of the target. He held it there for a few seconds until Toshinori said, "Stop." He closed his eyes, blinking hard, and reopened them. The target center was gone, and there were 2 small holes in the thick steel wall of the compound. Izuku could see through them into the countryside. Yue was on the edge of the city, and the teachers' houses faced the woods. Izuku was more than grateful for that now, seeing the tree he split in half with his quirk. Izuku looked at Toshinori. That hurt, he said. We're going to need to work on that then, Toshinori said, climbing up from behind the barrier. Holy shit. How many more quirks does young Midoriya have that he doesn't know of? He walked up to Izuku and put a hand on his shoulder. You did well today. Don't use this quirk on your own time until you can control it better. Have a good evening, young Midoriya. Izuku nodded, a little shaken up, and left in a flash. Toshinori sighed. This was going to be difficult to explain to Principal Nizu. The months leading up to the first day of UA passed in a blur for Izuku. He'd go to school, then head straight to UA, meeting Toshinori at the back entrance. He'd train all his abilities and mind for hours, pushing himself harder than ever. He was now able to hold 125 billion tons of force with some difficulty for the 3 hours and was able to use his heat vision, as Toshinori called it, with varying levels of intensity at pinpoint accuracy. Now he was too excited to fall asleep, excitement filling his veins. It was the night before the beginning of UA. There was a knock at his door. Izuku, can I come in? His mother asked. Izuku got up and threw a shirt on before he went and opened his door, where his mother stood, hands behind her back. What is it, Mom? He asked, pretending to be tired. His mother smiled, seeing through his attempt at deception. She brought her hands up, holding a small box. I have something for you. It was the only other thing besides the blankets in that craft with you, inject it into something, she said, handing it to Izuku. He looked at her curiously before he opened the box, revealing a small diamond-shaped object. On one end there were spires of varying length, a cord made of a strange material wound through it. On the other end there was a strange S shape etched into it. Izuku looked back at his mom. Toshi thinks it's a command key, but I want you to have it. For good luck. She said. How do you know it has good luck, Mom? You don't know where it came from. Izuku said, almost ruining the moment. His mom just shook her head and pulled him into a tight embrace. Because it brought you to me, she whispered. She pulled back and kissed him on the cheek. Now go to bed. You have a big day tomorrow. Notebook. Check. Handkerchief. Check. Good luck. Mom, I need to go or I'll be late. Izuku's mom stopped him with a hug. I know. I just worry. I'm so proud of you, Izuku. I love you. She said, tears welling in her eyes. I love you too, Mom. See you tonight. Izuku said as he ran out the door, a green-topped blur to everyone else as he sped towards UA. He stopped a few blocks from the gate, wanting to appear at least slightly normal on his first day. He stopped right at the gate, staring at the gold letters at its top. I did it. He thought. All of the people who doubted him. His classmates. Kaken. Even All Might doubted him, as momentary as it may be. He proved them all wrong by getting into UA. Izuku took a deep breath and smiled, walking in the gate as a student for the first time. Izuku walked down the hall to his homeroom, Class 1A. He rounded the corner and marveled at the size of the door. They must be that big for oversized students. He thought as he got closer to the door. I just hope Kaken and the guy with the glasses aren't in my homeroom sheet. Izuku opened the door to reveal the two arguing. Get your feet off the desk. These are UA property and should be treated with respect. The blue-haired boy with glasses said. Hell no. Where kind of shitty school did you come from, Four Eyes? Kaken growled, staring at him with his feet propped up. My name is Tenya Ida, not Four Eyes. And I came from Somei Junior High, a school with better standards than you. Ida said hotly. So you're a private school BSTRD, huh? Guess I'll have to destroy you too on my way to the top. Kaken said, a glint in his eye. Destroy me? Are you sure you want to be a hero? Ida said incredulously, but Kaken wasn't paying attention. He had caught sight of Izuku. Deku? What the F are you doing here? He yelled. Before Izuku could answer, Ida had surged in front of him, blocking Kaken. Hello, I am Tenya he started, hands chopping up and down before Izuku raised his hands. I know. I heard that exchange. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Ida nodded and bowed at Izuku, who looked at him in surprise. I am sorry for my words several months ago. I underestimated you. You managed to understand the test better than I. Ida said, bowing again, causing Izuku to blush. It wasn't that special. He started before a feminine voice interrupted him. Hey, you're the guy that saved me, aren't you? He turned around to see the chestnut-haired girl looking up at him, beaming. Why yeah, I guess so. He said awkwardly. She was about to say something when Kaken yelled. Stop ignoring me, Deku. How the hell did you get in here? You don't even have a quirk. You must have cheated. Izuku withered under his gaze, unsure how to respond when the girl stood in front of him. Hey, don't talk to him like that. He saved my life, she said hotly, before she looked at him, smiling again. We never got introduced. My name's Achiko Uraraka. What's yours? She kept talking, not waiting for an answer. I'm so excited to meet everyone. She exclaimed happily. If you're here to make friends, you might as well leave now. A voice deadpanned behind him. Izuku and Uraraka turned around. Behind them was a quaint-looking man with dark hair in a yellow sleeping bag. You're here to become heroes, not make social calls. He said, pulling out a juice box and gulping it down in one swig. The three of them stared at him for a moment before Ida jumped to attention. With a yes sir, he bolted to his spot. Uraraka was right behind him. Izuku looked at his schedule and sighed. He was right behind Kaken. Got a problem, Midoriya? The man asked as he got out of his sleeping bag. Izuku stiffened. No sir, he said, and hurriedly made his way over to his spot, Kaken glaring at him. The man walked in the classroom, putting his sleeping bag on the floor. That took 20 seconds. We'll need to work on that. He said emotionlessly. He stood at the podium at the front of the class. "My name is Shota Aizawa." Izuku stared at him hard. "Aizawa? Where have I heard that before?" He thought before he shook his head and continued listening. Aizawa folded his arms and looked at the class. "As you could have guessed, I am your homeroom teacher. Now go to the locker room and get the gym clothes provided on. We meet on Field A in 15 minutes. He said, picking up his sleeping bag and going to walk out the door. Achiko raised her hand. "Sir, what about orientation?" she asked. Aizawa looked at her with a dead look in his eyes. She shied away from his gaze. "This is orientation," he said and walked out the door. The entire class was on the field in 14 minutes. Aizawa looked at them silently. "It's a start," he said before turning to the field. "You will be doing a quirk apprehension test. It's a bit like those fitness tests you did in middle school, but with a catch." He turned back to the class. "Bakugo!" The ashen-haired boy looked at him. "How far could you throw in middle school?" The boy shrugged. 64 meters. He said. Aizawa tossed him a ball. "Do it with your quirk now," he said. Bakugo stared at him for a moment before he grinned. He walked a bit away from the rest of the class and stood there preparing. He pulled his arm back. "D!" He roared, and a massive explosion erupted from his hands, launching the ball into the air. "Die!" The entire class except for Izuku wondered, then looked at Aizawa, who was holding a device in his hands. He showed it to them. It read 705.2 m. "So manly," a red-haired kid with sharp teeth said. "I can't wait. This is going to be so much fun," a pink-skinned girl with horns exclaimed. "Fun, huh?" a cold voice said, and they looked over to Aizawa, who was staring at them. "You think this is a game? Well then, let me make it exciting. The person who gets the lowest score will be expelled from this UA," he said, his face emotionless. "Seriously? You can't do that. That's so unfair," Uraraka said. Aizawa glared at her coldly. "Life's unfair. It's the hero's job to combat that unfairness. Let's begin," he stated. They started with the 50-meter dash. They were put into pairs, Izuku cringing away from Kaken. "My classmates have some strong quirks," he thought, watching as Ida set the record with the engines in his legs. Uraraka made herself lighter, flinging herself across the finish line. Then it was his and Kaken's turn. The red-eyed teen was glaring at him. "I need to hold back, can't risk hurting anyone," Izuku thought as he took a deep breath and ran, everything around him a blur. He stopped 100 meters after the finish line and looked back. The entire class was staring at him. Kaken had just crossed the finish line, murder in his eyes. No one noticed All Might in a yellow pinstripe suit, watching from afar. Aizawa looked down at his stopwatch. It read 3.5 seconds. Just behind Ida. "Next test," he said. The test was grip strength. His classmate Mizo Shoji, with his 6 arms, was the only one to come close to Izuku, who broke the machine. Then the standing long jump. Kaken and Yuga Oyama, with his naval laser, cleared it with little difficulty. Izuku stood there, then leaped, landing neatly on the other side. Minoru Mineta made himself sick bouncing between 2 balls from his head. Izuku was right next to him, appearing a green-topped blur as he kept the same pace. One of the last tests was the ball throw, and Uraraka impressed the class by getting an infinity on it, using her quirk to make it weightless. Then it was Izuku's turn. He wound up, intending to get a distance close to Kaken. "Midoriya." Izuku looked over at Aizawa. The scruffy man stared at him. "You've been holding back this entire time. I haven't seen anything like what you did during the practice test. You don't get to choose to hold back in the real world, and neither do you get the choice here," he said. "If you hold back, I will not hesitate to expel you, regardless of your strength." Izuku looked at him. "Cover your ears," he said, before he ran in the opposite direction, ending up 200 meters away from the class. "Cover your ears?" Aizawa thought before a boom erupted from where Izuku had been standing. Air rushed out from him, knocking the rest of the class down. Behind a building, All Might grinned, bracing himself. Izuku had broken the sound barrier with a single throw. Aizawa stared down at the device in his hand. It read infinity just like Uraraka. What the hell, kid? He thought. Izuku ran back, stopping before the shocked class. I didn't hold back, Mr. Aizawa, he said. Aizawa blinked. Now he's snarky. He's going to be a headache, he thought before looking at the freckled boy. No, you didn't. All right, next test, he said, about to move on, when Kaken leaped up, rage barely contained. What the F was that, D? I thought you didn't have a quirk, he roared, swinging his hand back, about to strike Izuku with a massive explosion. Izuku flinched, but nothing happened. Instead, Kaken's bare palm slapped against Izuku's face, shattering against the green-haired teen's cheek. Kaken roared in rage and pain and spun around to see Aizawa, his hair standing up and eyes glowing red. Izuku finally realized why his name sounded familiar. Oh, you're the hero Eraserhead. Your quirk allows you to cancel other quirks as long as you maintain eye contact, he said excitedly. Yes, brilliant deduction, Midoriya, Aizawa said sarcastically, turning to Kaken. Bakugo, you can't just go picking fights with anyone who does better than you. It's going to happen a lot here, so get used to it, he said, staring at the teen, who calmed under his cold gaze. That hand needs medical attention. Go to recovery, girl. I'm letting you off the hook just this once because you have potential to be one of the greatest heroes of this generation, but don't do it again. Got it? He asked. Kaken nodded. He glared at Izuku angrily before he stomped off to the nurse's office. Aizawa sighed and turned back to the class. Next test. Izuku dominated the last test too. In endurance, he had no match. Kaken sullenly joined them, doing well in the final tests. Now the students stood in front of a screen flashing their results. Izuku Midoriya, Momo Yaoyorozu, Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, Tenya Ida, Fumikage Tokoyami, Mizo Shoji, Mashireo Ojiro, Ijiro Kirishima, Mina Ishido, Achiko Uraraka, Koji Koda, Rikido Sato, Tsuyu Azui, Yuga Oyama, Antasiro, Denki Kaminari, Kyokujiro, Toru Hagakure, Minoru Mineta. The small purple boy looked nervously at Aizawa. The raven-haired man stood next to the board. Good job, everyone. No one is expelled, he declared. The class stared at him in shock. That was just a clever ploy to get you to try your hardest, he exclaimed, a maniacal grin on his face. The class groaned. What? It was obvious if you stopped to think about it, Momo Yaoyorozu said. No, it wasn't, the people in the bottom 5 thought. Aizawa's resumed its normal, uninterested look. Go back and change. Your next class is in 20 minutes. All Might watched the class leave. Young Midoriya, you certainly left an impression, he thought. He was so absorbed in his thoughts he didn't notice Aizawa until he tapped him on the shoulder. Little early to be playing favorites, All Might, Aizawa said. All Might flinched before smiling. But you saw IT, didn't you? He said. He has the potential to be the next symbol of peace. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. He's strong. That much is certain. But it's wild. Uncontained. Aizawa shrugged. And he's timid. Hard to take a hero serious when he's stuttering. Then why didn't you expel him or young Mineta? You once expelled a whole class because they didn't live up to your expectations, he said triumphantly. Aizawa glared at him. Because he has potential. They all do. And I can't just leave a kid with that much power alone. He'll kill someone if he's not careful, he stated, not revealing any emotion behind his eyes. All Might just grinned at him. He knew under his rough exterior that Aizawa cared deeply about the kids. It was why he pushed them so hard, so they'd become stronger and survive to be a hero. Aizawa glared at him, then turned around. I need to talk to you about Midoriya in private, he said as he left. All right, All Might said, looking back at the receding students. Young Midoriya, you have done something incredible. You managed to surprise Aizawa, he thought as he left to go back to his office. Izuku walked with Ida. He had gotten to know him a little better in Ectoplasm's mathematics class, and Izuku decided he was a pretty cool guy, even if he was a stickler for the rules. The walk towards the entrance, school now over for the day. Izuku was tired, he still needed to train for the day and his mom had promised pork cutlets for dinner. Deku! Izuku turned around. Uraraka was running towards them. Wait up, she said, gasping for air when she got there. Ida looked at Izuku curiously. I thought your name was Izuku Midoriya, he said. It is. Izuku said hurriedly. Deku is a name Kaken uses on me, as an insult. Oh, Uraraka said. She smiled. Well, I like it. It kinda sounds like, you can do it. Plus it's cute. Deku it is. Izuku squeaked out. But you just said dash. Ida was stopped by Izuku's frantic glare. Regardless, I will refer to you as Midoriya. I will see the two of you tomorrow. He bowed and left to get on his train, leaving Achiko and Izuku alone. There was silence between the two of them. I wonder what they're thinking. Both of them thought. Here's my train. Uraraka said suddenly, walking to it quickly. She stopped and turned around. I'll see you tomorrow, Deku, she said brightly, then got on the train. Izuku waved weakly at her, caught up in his thoughts. They said they'll see me tomorrow. He marveled. I really like them. I wonder if they consider me a friend. He thought as he took off in a run towards Yue's back entrance. Izuku was in the machine, straining against it when Aizawa walked in the garage. The two stared at each other until Aizawa spoke. Where's All Might? Izuku looked him for a moment before talking. Upstairs, he croaked, sweat dripping down the side of his face. Aizawa nodded then studied him, his face giving away nothing. He walked over to the contraption, moving out of Izuku's view. So you do this every day? For how long? Aizawa's voice drifted from behind Izuku. He gulped. How much should I tell him? I just met him, but he's my teacher. He's going to help me become a hero. Izuku thought. Well, Aizawa said, suddenly in front of him. Izuku hesitated before replying to him. 2 hours, he said with some effort. Aizawa raised one eyebrow. Really? You push with your entire body against 125.5 billion tons for 2 hours every day, he said without a drop of emotion. Izuku shook his head. We increased the weight today. It's normally 3, he said before he looked down, his entire mind now focused on holding the weight. Aizawa snorted before he walked upstairs, leaving Izuku to his struggle. Aizawa walked up the stairs. I have to talk to All Might. Even by UA standards, he's powerful. He opened the door to find All Might passed out on the couch with his phone on his face, alarm set. Aizawa rolled his eyes. That fits, he thought. All Might was likely out of time for the day, no longer able to maintain his muscle form. Aizawa lightly tapped All Might's shoulder. Instantly the blond man was awake, growing into his muscle form and looking around wildly. What is it? Is there a disturbance? He asked. Aizawa shook his head. All Might sighed and returned to his normal form. He checked his phone. There was 10 minutes left on the timer. He sighed and sat back down, staring at Aizawa with his piercing blue eyes. What did you want to talk about? He asked, already knowing the answer. Aizawa sat down before he answered him. How long have you been training him? He said, a blank look on his face. About a year now, Toshinori said evenly. Aizawa crossed his arms. What is he? Even by the standards of today, he's insanely strong. He'll no doubt surpass you. Aizawa said. Toshinori nodded. I have no doubt he will. In truth, I don't know what he is. His mother found him when he was an infant. I only met him a year ago when I saw him saving young Bakugo. Toshinori said, careful not to reveal anything vital. It wasn't his secret to share. Aizawa just gave him a calculating glare. Toshinori met his gaze, and the two were like that for a while, until the alarm went off. He stood up, and Aizawa did as well. I'll be going now. Good night, he said, walking to the front door and exiting. I'll get to the bottom of this, he thought as he made his way to his own home. The next day, you could feel the excitement in the air. Today's class was Foundational Hero Studies, and the whole class had one thing on their mind. All Might, their teacher. Do you think he's actually our teacher? Hantashiro, a dark-haired boy with a quirk that allowed him to release tape from his arms, asked. I don't know, I thought he was being nice and helping Yue out. Ijiro Kirishima, a boy with a hardening quirk, exclaimed. Izuku inwardly smiled, the only one in the class who knew the truth. He was happy about yesterday's progress, but a little worried about what Toshinori had told Aizawa. He said he didn't say anything important when he freed Izuku from the machine, but he didn't say what he said. Izuku was pulled from his thoughts when the door was flung open. I am here, walking through the door like a normal person. All Might said. That wasn't very normal. The whole class thought. Wow. I can't believe he's here. Mina Ishido, the pink girl with horns and an acid quirk, said. He's wearing his Silver Age costume. Tsuyu Azui, a green-haired girl with frog-like eyes, stated. It's so different, it's giving me goosebumps. Masahiro Ojiro, a blonde boy with a tail, said as All Might made his way to the podium. Good morning. I teach foundational hero studies, All Might said, a massive smile on his face. In this class you will learn all the basics of being a hero. He pointed his finger in the air. Right. Let's get into what we're doing today. Combat training. The far wall opened up, revealing suitcases with numbers on them. These house costumes based on your quirk registration and requests you sent in before school started. Now go get changed, gather at ground beta. The entire class stood up. Yes, sir. It's said that the clothes make the man, young ladies and gentlemen. All Might said as Class 1A walked into ground beta wearing their hero outfits. Know this. From now on you are heroes. He clapped his hands together. You all look very cool. He looked towards the back to see Izuku walking in last. He stared. Izuku was wearing a mint green suit with white lines down the side. A hood with giant ears covered his head, and a mask that resembled teeth, making him look like a smaller version of All Might. All Might turned his head to the side, trying not to laugh. So obvious, he thought. Izuku looked down at himself. His mom had surprised him with the suit. Several weeks ago. Izuku, come here. Izuku looked up from his notebook. He had seen a hero named Black Lightning today on the way home from Toshinori's house and was now writing notes on his powerful electricity quirk. He got up from his bed and stretched. I wonder what this is about, he thought. He walked into the living room, where his mom was standing with a box. What's in the box? He asked. His mom only smiled. Open it, she said. Izuku did what she asked and gasped. Inside was a hero costume that looked exactly like the one he drew for himself years ago. I got it made for you as an apology. His mom. Izuku stared at her. Apology? For what? He asked. She took a deep breath. I haven't always supported your dream of becoming a hero, even though I knew about your true nature. This is my way of saying sorry for that, she said, eyes brim with tears. Izuku pulled her into a tight embrace. I'm not mad at you for any of that. It's in the past now, Mom, he said, tears running down his cheeks. She shook her head. I know, I just needed to do this. For you, she said. Izuku pulled back and smiled at her. I love it, Mom. Present day. Deku, I love your costume, it looks cute. Izuku started and looked at who had talked to him. It was Uraraka, in a skin-tight black and pink bodysuit with silver-pink boots and gauntlets. I should have been more specific. I look like an astronaut, she said, staring down at her costume, not noticing the blush that was blooming on Izuku's face. It looks great, he stammered, glad to be wearing a mask. All Might clapped his hands together, getting their attention. Now, young heroes, here are the rules, he said, striking a pose. There will be 2 teams of 2. One team are heroes, the other villains. The villains have the task of protecting a bomb from the heroes. To win, the heroes must touch the bomb, while the villains must protect it. Alternatively, both sides may win by restraining their opponents, All Might exclaimed, then motioned towards a box. The teams will be chosen randomly. Young Midoriya, you first. Izuku walked up and grabbed a piece of paper before All Might started calling other people to the front. He opened the paper, which had the words Achiko Uraraka on it. We're working together, isn't that lucky? Uraraka said, bright smile under her visor. Why, yeah, lucky. Izuku said hurriedly. Oh God, I'm paired with a girl. I hope I do well. He thought. Alright. The teams and pairings are as follows. Hero team is stated first. Team A, Izuku Midoriya and Achiko Uraraka vs Team D, Tenya Ida and Katsuki Bakugo. Team B, Shoto Todoroki and Mizo Shoji vs Team I, Mashireo Ojiro and Toru Hagakure. Team H, Fumikage Tokoyami and Tsuyu Azui vs Team J, Ijiro Kirishima and Hantasiro. Team G, Denki Kaminari and Kyoka Jiro vs Team C, Momo Yaoyorozu and Minoru Mineta. Team E, Yuga Aoyama and Mina Ishido vs Team F, Rikido Sato and Koji Koda. Izuku gulped as he looked toward Kaken. You're dead, Deku, he said, an evil grin on his face. Izuku shied away from his gaze, then stopped. I have my quirks now, I don't have to be afraid of him. He stood up straighter and grinned at Kaken, who scowled. Team A and D are up first. Team D, you have 5 minutes to prepare. Team A, wait outside the building until a buzzer goes off. Rest of the class, follow me. All Might and their classmates disappeared into another building, no doubt housing a control room with cameras. Izuku turned around, nervous at the prospect of fighting his old friend. He turned to Uraraka. So your quirk is Z0 gravity, right? He said. Uraraka nodded. Yeah, anything I touch I can remove its gravity. She said, it's not as amazing as yours though. Izuku frantically put his hands up. I don't think so. You can remove rubble with ease. And if anyone gets close to you, you can just send them flying into the stratosphere, he said. She looked at him for a moment then smiled. So how do you want to do this? You know Bakugo better than any of us. Uraraka said, looking up at Izuku. He put his hand on his chin and looked up at the building. Kaken will put the bomb on the top floor. It makes sense, there's a lot of space between us and it. He doesn't like me, and he's made it clear he's singling me out. Okay, that's a little weird, but it sounds like you have some sort of plan, right? Uraraka said, tapping Izuku on the arm. He turned and looked at her, nodding rapidly. Before he could say anything, a loud buzzer went off. It was time. Izuku and Uraraka walked through the hallways, slowly climbing through the floors. They were wary, looking through every doorway, but it appeared that Izuku's prediction was right. It was eerily quiet. So, how long have you known Bakugo? Uraraka asked, wanting to break the silence. About 14 years, Izuku said nervously. I've never been alone with a girl before. He thought. So has he always been like that? Uraraka asked, fearfully glancing down another hallway. Like what? Izuku asked curiously. You know, an a-hole, Achiko said bluntly. Izuku flinched, hoping that Kaken hadn't heard that. And no, he only started H's mean streak W when he got his quirk. B before that, he was only dash. Izuku stopped, staring ahead. He could hear breathing. What is it? Uraraka said nervously. Izuku was about to answer when a boom sounded from the end of the dark hallway. D.E. Kaken roared. Izuku blinked, the world moving in slow motion. He looked at Uraraka, then back at Kaken. If he got out of the way, then the swing could go wide and hit her or a support beam. Izuku braced himself. Kaken hit Izuku square in the face, a large explosion emerging from his palm and creating a cloud of smoke. Uraraka dove into a doorway, shielding her from the blast. She looked at the smoking place where her friend was. Deku! The smoke cleared, revealing Izuku and Kaken. The latter had jumped backward, his hand bent out of shape. He ignored it, glaring at Izuku with hatred. Achiko stared. Izuku's mask had been ripped to shreds, but he was still standing, completely unharmed. What the hell happened to you? Kaken roared. You're supposed to be quirkless. AF Deku. At the last insult, Izuku's face hardened. You've called me that for years, Kaken. Quirkless Deku. Useless. For a long time, I hated that nickname you gave me. He turned to look at Uraraka and smiled. But recently, a friend has pointed out that it also sounds like, you can do it. He turned back to Kaken, determination on his face. So I'm going to take the name you gave me, and use it to inspire others to never give up. I want them to know that they can do it too. He yelled, eyes filled with tears. Kaken stared at him in shock before his gaze hardened. So you want to stick up for the runts, huh? Then you can join them down there. He screamed, his right hand streaming forward, explosions cracking. Deku! Uraraka said, her voice catching. Izuku dodged the right hook and grabbed Kaken's forearm. He spun him around and threw him through a wall. Izuku turned back to Uraraka. Go! Find the bomb. I'll take care of him and meet you there, he said. Uraraka opened her mouth, then nodded. She rushed by Izuku and up the stairs, disappearing from sight. Izuku looked back at the hole he had created. I need to talk to him after this. Achiko made her way up the rest of the stairs, thinking about the exchange between the former friends. I was the one who changed that name for him? Thought. 7 minutes remaining. She shook her head. We need to finish this. She leaped up the remainder of the stairs, arriving at the top floor. Uraraka opened the door quietly, revealing the bomb and her armored foe on opposite ends of the room. I found the bomb, she said quietly into the earpiece they had been given before the start of the match. Got it? I'm finishing up here. I'll be up soon. Deku's voice said back to her. An explosion shook the building. Uraraka couldn't help but be worried about Izuku, even if he was strong. She shook her head. He believed in me, so I need to believe in him. She thought, looked back at the bomb. Tenya Ida had heard everything that happened downstairs. He was becoming more and more impressed by his green-haired classmate with every passing day. But that wasn't his focus right now. I am a villain in this situation, he said aloud. So I need to act like one, he started laughing maniacally. Achiko giggled. He sounded ridiculous. Ida swung around and stared at her. Hero, I found you. Achiko yelped. I've been discovered. She spoke into her earpiece before facing Ida. Her face hardened. All I need to do is touch the bomb. She ran for the bomb. Ida ran, engines in his calves propelling him past her and in front of the bomb, tripping her as she did. You'll never get past me, hero. You need to touch me to use your quirk, and I'm fast enough for that. Achiko got up. I get it. I get it, she said, frustrated. What can I do? She thought. She glanced around her, eyes landing on a large piece of rubble. She grabbed it, making it weightless and flinging it at Ida. Dodge this, she yelled. Ida leaped into the air, spinning around and bringing his armored shin against the debris, shattering it. He laughed again. You'll have to do better than that, hero, he said, bringing his other leg around to hit her. Achiko dodged, removing her gravity and leaping backward to put distance between the two of them. Sheet, she thought as her stomach lurched. She was nearing her limit. Deku, I can't get past Ida. Where are you? She was met with static. Deku, a few minutes ago. Izuku walked through the hole in the wall, hearing Uraraka running up the stairs. It had been stupid of him not to use the rest of his abilities. I need to remember not to rely on my strength alone. There was static in his ear for a moment, then Uraraka's voice spoke. I found the bomb, she said. Got it? I'm finishing up here. I'll be up soon. Izuku replied. He looked around and found Kaken leaning against a wall, blood dripping from his mouth. The red-eyed teen glared at him angrily. Stay down, Kaken, Izuku said, knowing that he never would. His pride wouldn't allow it. In his earpiece, he heard Uraraka say she'd been found, but he ignored it. UBSTRD. Never using your quirk. But don't think I'm good enough for it. The blonde growled, standing up straight. He got into a fighting stance. Don't do this, Izuku whispered. Kaken just broke into a run. He leaped, his right hand forward. Izuku prepared to dodge like before, when Kaken suddenly pivoted, using his quirk to fly over Izuku and blast him in the back, sending the freckled teen flying into the ground. Izuku got up, shaking his head. He was blasted again. Who's weak now? Always looking down on me, bastard dash. Kaken's rant was stopped by Izuku grabbing his throat. He lifted the blonde effortlessly, looking him in the eye. You think I look down on you? I know I'm weak. You've always been better than me. It's why I drive myself so hard. So I can one day beat you. Izuku ended with a roar, throwing Kaken into a wall. Deku, he heard. Sheet the match. Yes, he asked. I can't get past Ida. Where are you? She said. I'm still 3 floors down. Hang on, I'm coming dash. 2 minutes remain. All Might's voice rang out. At the same time, Kaken pulled himself out of the rubble, rage in his eyes. I'll kill you. He roared. Izuku groaned. What can I do? What can I do? He looked up, then froze. He blinked hard again, activating his X-ray vision. He could see Ida. An idea formed in his head. Uraraka, wait for my signal, then float to the bomb. He said. What's your signal? She asked. You'll know it when you see it. He replied. Don't ignore me. Kaken screamed. He lifted one of his arms, pointing it at Izuku. I had the nerds make me this. It's been collecting sweat this whole time, he said triumphantly. Young Bakugo, do not use that cannon. You could destroy the building. All Might's voice ordered. Only if it doesn't hit him. He said maniacally, beginning to pull the pin out. Izuku closed his eyes. He could stop the fight right now, but Kaken would only hate him even more. This is the best way. He thought, feeling the now familiar pain building behind his eyes. Kaken pulled the pin, releasing a titanic blast. At the same time, Izuku opened his eyes, crimson beams erupting from them, destroying the support beam of the floor Ida was standing on. He fell with a yelp, and Uraraka launched herself into the air towards the bomb. Izuku bore the full blast from Kaken, flames ripping past him. Uraraka landed on the bomb. Secured. Ochako landed on the bomb. Secured. Izuku allowed himself to grin in satisfaction, then looked at the explosion racing towards him in slow motion. The freckled teen braced himself. I'm going to feel this tonight. The control room was silent, looking at the cloud of smoke where Izuku was. They sighed in relief when it cleared, revealing an ash-covered Izuku, still standing. Match over. Heroes win. All Might barked into the mic, come to the control room. The 4 walked in varying states of disarray. Kaken was in the worst shape, his left hand badly mangled and blood running from his mouth as he stared at the ground in shock. Izuku was covered in ash, his suit burned beyond repair, and Uraraka was holding her stomach, trying not to throw up. Ida was the only one completely fine, if a bit disappointed he lost. All Might struck a pose. Well done. Young Bakugo, go see Recovery Girl about that hand. The normally arrogant teen nodded, still staring at the ground. I lost. He thought. I lost to Deku. He slowly walked out of the room. All Might clasped his hands together. Now, he said. Who was the MVP this match? He exclaimed, looking at the class. Momo Yaoyorozu raised her hand. Tenya Ida, she said, garnering surprise from the rest of the class. She turned to them. It's obvious. It's not Bakugo because he got caught up in his emotions. Same for Midoriya. It's not Uraraka because she accidentally revealed herself to Ida, who was the only one who didn't get caught up in his emotions and stayed by the bomb. The heroes would have lost if not for Midoriya's quick thinking and his other quirk. She finished, the rest of the class staring at her. Uraraka and Izuku looked sheepish. Whoops. They both thought. All Might was shocked as well. That was everything I was going to say and more. He thought before he nodded. Correct, young Yaoyorozu. Both teams did well regardless. Next up, Team B versus Team I. He looked at Izuku with a wide smile. You might want to go get changed, young Midoriya, he said. Izuku started, looking down at himself. His suit's upper half had been burned to shreds, revealing his muscled torso. The bottom half was barely any better, his once pristine red sneakers covered in dirt and grime and numerous holes dotted over his jumpsuit. He looked up and noticed everyone, especially the girls in his class, staring at him too. His face turned beet red, and he turned around and disappeared in a green blur. All Might chuckled before he got the class's attention back on the screen. "You?" Izuku tensed, turning around to face his former friend at the end of the day. The explosive user didn't show up for the remainder of the class. Izuku could only imagine how sad he had gotten since their fight. The blonde firecracker marched up to Izuku, jamming his finger into his chest. That fight didn't matter, you hear me? He snarled. Sports festival. You better not lose before the final round. Izuku said nothing, nodding in affirmation. That's right, now run home like a good little dadash. Bak. You. Go. I found you. All Might exclaimed happily, massive hands on Kaken's annoyed shoulders. All Might started talking in earnest to the ashen-haired teen. Izuku decided to take this moment to exit running towards All Might's house to train. Several weeks later. What's it like having All Might as a teacher? Izuku blinked. One moment, he had been walking to UA, the next, he'd been swarmed by reporters clamoring for a story. He stuttered, not sure how to respond. He is a capable and dedicated teacher. A voice rang out, attracting the attention of the mob. It was Ida, deftly steering the reporters away from his classmates. Izuku slipped away forgotten, reminding himself to thank his friend. At homeroom, Aizawa surprised them. You need to elect a class representative, he said. A normal school activity, the class thought. I want to be it. Mina Ishido said, leaping up. No, I want to be it. Rikido Sato said, raising a fist. The others yelled their names as well. Ida stepped up. The job of a class representative is a serious one. You will be responsible for the entire class. We should have a vote to elect the representative. It's only fair, he said, arms chopping up and down robotically. Aizawa pulled out his sleeping bag. I don't care as long as you choose someone before the end of the PRD, he said. The class decided to go with Ida's idea. They gathered up the votes. Izuku Midoriya, 8. Momo Yaoyorozu, 6. Mina Ishido, 2. Shoto Todoroki, 2. Katsuki Bakugo, 1. Minor 2. Kyokudro, 0. Fumikage Tokoyami, 0. Mizo Shoju, 0. Suashui, 0. Toru Hagakure, 0. Mashireo Ojiro, 0. Ijiro Kirishima, 0. Achiko Uraraka, 0. Koji Koda, 0. Rikido Sato, 0. Yugoima, 0. Antasuro, 0. Denki Kaminari, 0. Tenida, 0. Kaken slammed his hands on his desk, explosions popping from his fingertips. Who the hell voted for Deku? He asked. Uraraka whistled innocently in her seat, while Ida was hitting his head over and over on his desk. He had really wanted the position. I give up. I give up, he muttered. Dude. You didn't even vote for yourself. Sato said, confusion on his face. Of course not. That's not becoming of a humble class representative. Izuku stood up. People voted for me? He thought as he made his way to the front, Yaoyorozu right next to him. With the second most number of votes, she became the vice class rep. The class looked expectantly at him. I'll do my best. He stammered out, mind blank. Luckily Aizawa had just woken up. Good, you've elected someone. Now go to lunch. Izuku sat with Ida and Ochako, picking at his food. I'm sure you'll do great, Midoriya, she said, smiling at him. I don't know, I've never done anything like this, he said, staring hard at the mashed potatoes. Ida stood up, getting both of their attention. Nonsense. Your inquisitive nature will surely help you, as it did during the entrance exam. That's why I voted for you, he exclaimed, arms moving in a blur. Izuku blinked at him. You voted for me? But you wanted the position, he said. Yes. I decided that you were the best suited for the task, and humbly gave my vote to you, Ida said, sitting back down. Izuku rolled his eyes. If you call yourself humble, you're not as humble as you think, he thought. Uraraka looked at Ida curiously. You're very formal, she said. Why is that? Ida froze in place before he relaxed. I come from a long line of heroes, he said sheepishly. Izuku looked at him. Family of heroes, Ida. He snapped his fingers, getting their attention. Your brother is the turbo hero, Ingenium, he exclaimed. He has a lot of sidekicks. Ida nodded at him. Yes, that's why I'm at UA, he said. To become a hero my brother can be proud of. They were interrupted by a loud, alarming blaring through the cafeteria. Izuku clutched his ears, his sensitive hearing, normally a useful tool, now a shocking handicap. Someone had breached the gates. Ida and Ochako stood up, Izuku still clutching his head in pain. It was a level 3 alarm. Someone had breached the gates. Uraraka looked at Izuku. "What do we do?" she asked. Izuku said nothing, clutching his ears in agony. There was a sense of panic as the crowd around them thickened, pushing them towards the doors. Only Izuku didn't move, frozen to his place as Ida and Uraraka were pushed from him. Ida looked out the window and saw dozens of cameras flashing. "It's just the press," he thought. He looked over to Izuku, who was only now adapting to the piercing noise. "Midoriya," he yelled. Izuku looked up, his ears still ringing. Looked at Ida. "It's just the press," the blue-haired teen exclaimed. Izuku nodded, then slammed his hand together, causing a small shockwave to erupt from his fingertips. The noise was so loud it brought the cafeteria to a standstill in seconds. "It's just the press, look," Izuku said exasperatedly. The congregation of students sheepishly walked slowly towards the exits. Izuku dragged his hand over his face. "You'd think the students here would be calmer in situations like these," he said, shaking his head, then stopped when he felt a liquid running down his ears. Izuku touched them, shocked to find blood on his fingertips. "I can't remember the last time I bled. In fact, I don't think I've ever bled at all. Even Bakugo could only throw him back, maybe bruise him, but never burn." Izuku started. "My eardrums burst and healed all within 30 seconds of each other." Izuku was pretty confident he could add a healing factor to his growing list of quirks now. Just how many did he have? "I have to find out where I came from." "Midoriya. Let's go," Ochako said, tapping Izuku on the shoulder. Aizawa said we needed to change into our hero outfits and head to the motor pool. Izuku shook his head and followed after his friends. He'd have to figure his weird quirk out another time. Izuku tugged at the collar of his gym clothes. With his suit damaged beyond repair, he had to resort to the school's apparel, which came with its own bag of worms. On one hand, they were made of a high-quality material resistant to tearing and other kinds of damage. On the other hand, the school seemed to make their clothes on the slim side. Izuku was not a slim guy. He'd even asked for a size up and it was still too small. Izuku sighed. "Nothing I can do about it right now," he thought, closing his locker gently and leaving the locker room. At the motor pool, Ida was attempting to get them into the bus based on their last names. "It's an open concept, man," Kirishima pointed out. "Well then, it seems it does not matter the order. My apologies," Ida said, waving his arms around mechanically. Aizawa walked up to them. "All right, let's get on," he said, climbing into the bus. The class clambered in after him. Izuku ended up next to Tsuyu Azui and across from Ida. They started talking about their quirks to pass the time. "I wish I had a flashy quirk like yours, Midoriya. All I can do is harden my skin," Kirishima said, baring his sharp teeth. Izuku raised his hands. "Your quirk is incredible, Kirishima. You'll be a great hero with it, I'm sure," he said enthusiastically. The red-haired teen just shook his head. "It's easier to be popular if you have a flashy quirk like Todoroki or Bakugo though," he said. "Bakugo won't be popular, he's too angry," Azui said, pointing at their ashen-haired classmate, who turned around and looked at her. Did you say Kermit?" he yelled. "Precisely my point," she said, staring at him. "Yeah man, even I can tell your personality has the attractiveness of burnt toast." Denki Kaminari, a blonde-haired teen with a black streak through his hair said. "Shut up, Pikachu," Bakugo retorted. "Bakugo getting teased?" Izuku thought incredulously. Azui turned to him. "Ribbit, so what are your quirks, Midoriya?" Izuku started. "I've never really stopped to count," he thought. I have increased strength. Durability seems to go along with that. Increased speed and heat vision, as well as enhanced senses and X-ray vision," he said, counting off on his fingers. His classmates stared at him. One of them, Mineta, stood up in his chair. "You have X-ray vision? Do you mean to tell me that you can see through walls?" But you haven't even looked at the wall of the girls' locker room once, he yelled, pointing his finger at Izuku. No? Why would I ever do that? He said confusedly. His eyes widened in realization and his cheeks became as red as strawberries. He started frantically waving his hands, face beet red. I'd never do something as reprehensible as that, he managed to get out before he buried his face in his hands. Azui put her hand on his arm, only making his face redder. Relax, Ribbit, we know you wouldn't. You're not a pervert, she said, glaring at Mineta, who sat down. Yeah, Midori, we know you wouldn't do that. Ashido said. Not that I'd mind, she said under her breath. Azui turned back to Izuku. Anyway, you have multiple quirks? That's unheard of, even 2 quirks are rare. Ribbit? Yeah, I guess Azui, Izuku said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. He still wasn't used to compliments. Call me Tsu, she said. Izuku quickly nodded. That's insane, man. Who the hell were your parents? Kirishima said in amazement. My mom has an attraction of small objects quirk, and my dad has a fire-breathing quirk. The doctors think it was a miracle, Izuku chuckled, the rest of the class joining in bar Bakugo, who narrowed his eyes. Things weren't adding up with Deku, and he'd be dead if he didn't get to the bottom of it. Before any of them could say anything, Aizawa stood up. Everyone quiet. We're here. Welcome to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ, Aizawa said, leading the class into the massive facility. And All Might's not here, what a surprise, Aizawa thought. Inside the facility, there were several different environments, each designed to fall apart, mimicking disasters. In the front, there was a person in a large spacesuit. Uraraka gasped. It's Rescue Hero 13. She's my favorite hero, she exclaimed. 13 nodded. You are correct. Today, you will be training your abilities for rescue. I understand some of you have quirks more suited to fighting. We'll find a way around that, she said, looking at Bakugo, who glared at them. The rescue hero continued unabashedly. My quirk is able to SCK anything and everything in. It's useful for moving debris, but it can also kill people too. She folded her arms. If I'm able to rescue people with my quirk, you can too. Any questions? Toru Hagakure raised her gloved hand. Who are those people? She asked, pointing towards the center. Aizawa and 13 turned around. Several figures were emerging from dark portals. At their center stood a lanky white-haired man with hands covering his face and body. Next to him stood a man wreathed in shadows and a massive black creature with a beak for a face. Class 1A stared at them. Is this part of the training? Mineta said nervously. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. No, they are not. 13, get them out of here, he said, pulling on strange glasses and charging towards the group of villains as the class now realized what they were. Come on. Quickly, 13 said, tearing the class out of their stupor. They turned and started running towards the exit. What about Mr. Aizawa? Izuku yelled, holding back so he stayed with the class. Don't worry about him. He's a pro hero, he can take care of himself, 13 said, shuffling along in her heavy suit. I agree, a voice said. The class slid to a stop, looking for the source of the voice. In front of them, a man shrouded in a dark purple cloud appeared. You should be worrying about yourselves, he said. Who are you? Why are you here? Ida asked. The villain let out a sinister chuckle. I am Kurogiri, we are the League of Villains. Kurogiri spread his arms. And we are here to kill All Might. At that proclamation, the entire class froze, save Bakugo and Kirishima, who charged the smoky villain. Die! Bakugo yelled, explosions popping in his hand. Kurogiri raised his hands. Portals materialized around Izuku and his classmates, whisking them away. The last thing Izuku saw before he fell through the storming pit of darkness was Ochako, a terrified look in her eyes. He tried to fight it, but he was pulled under. USJ, flood zone. Izuku was falling towards the huge body of water in the USJ. He hit it with a splash. I need to get back to them. And how could they kill All Might? He thought before he was in the jaws of a huge shark-shaped thing. One of the villains. Izuku lifted his arm that wasn't in the fiend's grasp and struck him lightly in the nose. The man released him from his jaws, clutching his nose in pain before he was struck in the back of the head by a frog-like girl. Azui! She wrapped her tongue around Izuku and flung him onto the deck of the boat in the center of the lake, where their classmate Ojiro had taken cover behind the railing. Azui jumped in after them, panting. Izuku looked at her, appreciation in his eyes. "Thanks, Azui," he said. She nodded. "I told you to call me Tsu," she said, slightly annoyed. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. "Sorry, what should dash?" He was cut off when the boat shook. "Come on out, heroes. We just want to play." A voice called out mockingly. Izuku activated his X-ray vision. The entire boat was surrounded by over a dozen villains, thirsty for their blood. He blinked and looked at Tsu and Ojiro. "There's 12 of them surrounding the boat," he said, his voice analytical. "What should we do?" Tsu asked, finger on her chin. Izuku grabbed his necklace and chin, something he had gotten into a habit of. "What should we do? The right thing would be to wait for someone to rescue us, but I don't think we have the time for that. The alarms have." "Midoriya." Izuku looked at Tsu. "Stop that. It's unsettling, Ribbit." Izuku stared at her. Why would they put someone with a water-based quirk here? He thought. They don't know our quirks. He realized, snapping. Tsu looked at him. "Tsu, why would they drop you here? You're the best in water combat out of all of us." Tsu tilted her head. "That's right. The only reason I can think of is that we were dropped randomly, meaning that dash. They don't know our quirks." Izuku finished triumphantly. "Let's take stock. The only quirks I have that'll help us are heat vision and enhanced strength," he said, hand on his chin and necklace again. "I have my tongue," Tsu said. "My legs are pretty strong too." "Got it," Izuku said. Ojiro stepped forward, stumbling when the boat rocked from another hit from the villains. "My quirk is called Tail," he said, the appendage waving behind him. "I also know martial, look out." In a flash, the blonde martial artist was jumping over Izuku, his foot connecting with a villain that had managed to sneak on board the ship. The villain, another sharkhead, fell to the floor with a thud, just behind Azui. The trio stared at the villain for a moment, before Azui turned and bowed low to Ojiro. "Nice one," she said. Ojiro nodded, blushing at the praise. Izuku took a deep breath, sighing in relief. The air expelled from his lungs coated the deck in front of him in ice. The three students stared at it in a mixture of surprise and shock. Tsu dragged her hand down her face. "You've got to be kidding me, Ribbit." When another blow shook the boat, Izuku looked back at them, a wide grin adorning his face. "All right, I have a plan." Izuku leaped into the sky, lungs filled with air. The green-haired teen oriented himself to where the majority of the villains were and expelled the air from his lungs with all his might. A cyclone of icy wind erupted from his mouth, shooting downward and freezing the villains in the water. Izuku fell for a moment before he was grabbed by Tsu, who pulled him back to the boat. He quickly grabbed her and Ojiro and leaped off the boat, landing safely on the shore. Izuku stood up straight, looking at the center, where Aizawa was likely still fighting. Using his X-ray vision, he saw his teacher locked in battle with the titanic beast. Aizawa was managing to dodge, but he seemed to be tiring. He can't go on forever, he realized. His quirk is best suited for quick fights, not long ones, he thought. He made a move to start walking towards where his teacher was when a tug on his hand stopped him. He looked down at a concerned Azui and Ojiro. "Where are you going?" Ojiro asked. "The exit's that way." Izuku shook his head. "Mr. Aizawa needs help," he said. Tsu stepped forward. "What about the rest of our classmates? Surely they need help too?" "Ribbit," Izuku shook his head again. "They can take care of themselves," he said, voice serious and clear again. "Mr. Aizawa is likely at his limit now, and they have something that can kill All Might here." Izuku turned around, his eyes glowing crimson. "And I'm going to stop them." Several minutes ago, USJ entrance. Ochako stared at the place where Midoriya had been only moments before. Mizo Shoji had grabbed her and several others before the portals swallowed them up. Where did this guy take him? She thought worriedly. The villain in question stared at them with emotionless bars of gold where his eyes should have been. So, he said, his voice dripping with malice. Who wants to die first? 13 stepped forward, arm outreached. Me, I think. Ida, run as fast as you can. Go get help, she said, opening a clasp on one of their fingers. The air began to howl as it was dragged into her black hole quirk. It began dragging the smoke villain in until he formed a portal in front of it. I don't think so, he said as he opened another portal. Directly behind 13, whose own power began to tear her apart. She was able to deactivate it, but not before it had shredded her suit and back. 13. Ochako yelled. She and her classmates ran over to the gravely injured hero. 13 groaned, looking over to the students' worried faces, landing on Ida. What did I tell you? Go. Ida shook his head. I can't just leave you. That's unbecoming of a hero. Ochako cut him off. Ida, we need help. We're relying on you to get it. She said fiercely. We'll handle him, just go. Yeah, Ida, go. Shoji said via one of his tentacles. Are you done yet? Uraraka and the others started, looking at Kurogiri, whose eyes were tilted in what could only be amusement. Ochako glared at him, noticing the strange piece of metal wrapped around the villain's neck. That has to be a weakness of some kind. She thought. She looked at Ida. Go! She yelled, starting to run toward Kurogiri, Shoji, and the others hot on her heels. Ida hesitated for a moment, then ran as fast as he could towards the entrance. There's a piece of metal in there, grab it. Ochako said, making herself weightless and leaping up at the villain. He dodged her, intending to go after Ida when Shoji slammed into him. He grabbed the metal bar and pulled, dragging Kurogiri to the ground. Ida kept running. Good, Ochako thought, releasing herself. She looked over at Shoji and froze. He was lying on the ground, one of his tentacles missing. She looked around rapidly for Kurogiri, only to drop to the ground as a blow aimed for her head sailed over her. She jumped back, staring at the cloud of darkness. You're smart, Kurogiri said, annoyed. You figured out my weakness. For that you'll suffer. But first, he said, turning towards Ida. Rikido Sato jumped in front of him, strengthened by his sweets. Pick on someone your own size, he said. Kurogiri looked at him. Okay, he said, swinging his fist into Sato's cheek, sending him flying. He started after Ida but was stopped by Hantasiro grabbing his weakness with his tape, flinging him back into Ochako's waiting hands. The moment she touched him, he became weightless, floating helplessly as Ida burst through the doors and sped towards the main campus of UA. Kurogiri sighed. The day is lost, he thought. He backhanded Ochako, making her release him, and disappeared in a cloud of purple smoke. The students and injured hero stood there in bewilderment. Where did he go? They thought, ready for another attack, but none came. Suddenly they heard a boom at the center of USJ, and they turned to see the massive black figure flying into the air. What the hell? Aizawa couldn't have done that, Sato said. Siro stared at the thing as it got lodged in the ceiling. Which means it must have been Dash. Midoriya, Ochako said, staring down at the pavilion. Several minutes ago, USJ Plaza. Aizawa dodged another attack from a villain, flipping over his head and kicking him in the back. The hero stood in a defensive stance, panting. There were still at least 10 more villains surrounding him, including the big black one that hadn't done anything yet. It stood next to the guy covered in hands, who was clearly the ringleader. Aizawa's eyes were dry, a result of using his quirk continuously. I need to finish this. He thought, getting ready to take down the white-haired mastermind. Before he could, the man started laughing, and Aizawa realized he wasn't a man, but a boy. You put on a pretty good show, hero. These guys are NPCs, the League of Villains hired them to take out the students, he said. Aizawa chuckled, drawing anger from the teen. Then they're already defeated. My students are stronger than you give them credit for, Aizawa said. The boy narrowed his eyes in anger. I tire of our conversation. You're not even the final boss. No, Mukil. At this, The bird-faced giant swiveled his head, looking at Aizawa, then appeared in front of him, raising his leg. Aizawa got out of the way just as the thing crashed his foot down on where he had been, cracking the pavement. Aizawa activated his quirk, but the thing was barely slowed down, striking Aizawa and sending him flying. It's just that fast naturally? He thought as he flipped in the air, landing on his feet and holding his side. That's a rib broken. The silver-haired boy began laughing. Nomu has multiple quirks. He gloated. You can't possibly hope to defeat him. Aizawa looked at the Birdman in a new light. So that's his deal. He thought as he dodged another blow from the beast. He's right. I can't hurt this thing, so I'll just have to hope All Might gets his blonde butt over here. Aizawa thought. They continued like this, the Nomu striking at Aizawa, the man dodging him. The teen yawned. I'm bored. Nomu, stop playing with your food. He said. Aizawa's eyes widened. It's been holding back this entire time? The dark colossus dashed toward Aizawa, faster than he ever had before, and grabbed him by the neck, slamming him into the pavement over and over again. The boy began to laugh again. Mr. Aizawa. Suddenly, the Nomu let go of Aizawa. The gravely injured man slowly lifted his head. The thing the wannabe villain called a Nomu was a rapidly disappearing speck directly above him. In front of him stood Midoriya in a rudimentary fighting stance, the Nomu's arm lying at his feet. I knew this kid would cause me a headache. Aizawa thought as he slipped into unconsciousness. Izuku ran as fast as he could to the center, arriving just in time to see Aizawa's face eat the concrete. Crying out, he let loose the energy he'd been holding behind his eyes, cutting across the massive black creature's arm at the elbow, forcing him to let go of his teacher. He dashed to the beast and hit it with an uppercut, launching it into the air, where it hit the roof. The villains around him stood in shock until one covered in hands walked forward and stuck a finger at him. Who the hell are you? He asked. Izuku held up one finger. One moment, he said, then he grabbed Aizawa and ran towards where he left Ojiro and Tsu. He stopped in front of them. Tsu glared at him until she realized who he was holding. What happened? She said. They have this big beast. I think it's the thing that is supposed to kill All Might. Izuku explained. Listen, there's no time, he said at their shocked expressions. If that thing is supposed to kill All Might, I doubt the hit I just gave it took it down for good. He handed Aizawa to Tsu. Get him to the front. He held up his hand. I'm the only one here who might be able to stop it. I have to try, he said, voice clear and deadly serious. The pair stared at him before Tsu shook her head and maneuvered their teacher so Mineta could grab his legs. There's no way I can hope to stop either the All Might Killer or Midoriya, she thought. Rip-it good luck, Midoriya, she said. Izuku smiled at them. Don't worry. Why? He struck a pose. Because I am here. That was terrible, Ribbit. Tamura Shigaraki was furious. Everything had been going well. All Might wasn't there, but his students were, and that was enough to draw him out or hurt him. Nomu had performed splendidly until that green-haired kid arrived. He was still stuck in the roof, not doing anything without orders. And then the kid had the audacity to leave with that annoying hero. All in all, the day had not gone according to plan. The green-haired kid appeared in front of him, arms folded. Shigaraki scrambled back in shock. He's fast, the villain thought. So, who are you? The boy asked. Shigaraki gnashed his teeth together. We are the League of Villains. We're here to kill All Might and his students. At this, the freckled teen raised an eyebrow. Well, I can't allow that, he stated simply. Shigaraki grinned then. I'd hoped you'd say that. He looked up. Nomu. The giant birdman freed himself and flung himself down towards the boy who dared interrupt his plan. He started laughing gleefully. Perhaps the day wasn't ruined. Izuku dodged the Nomu as it landed, cracking the concrete around it. It got up and charged at him, moving faster than the normal I could see, but Izuku was not normal. He noticed its arm had regrown as he dodged its first hit, then slammed his fist into its face, only knocking it back a dozen feet now that it was ready for him. Izuku tried to hit it with a right hook, but it dodged, backhanding Izuku in the face as it did. He remained rooted to the ground, much to the villain's surprise. Izuku felt his cheek. He started laughing. The white-haired guy looked at him weirdly. Izuku ducked as he dodged another punch from the Nomu, still laughing. Izuku wiped a tear from his eye and looked at the villain apologetically. Sorry, it's just Dash. He looked back at the Nomu, a grin on his face. This is the first time anything's ever kinda hurt. The villain only screamed in response. Kill him, he bellowed. Izuku faced the Nomu and dug his feet in, bracing as it started landing blow after blow on him, barely affecting him at all. Who the hell is this guy? Shigaraki thought, anger rising within him as the beast supposed to kill All Might barely affected the younger boy. With a yell, Izuku grabbed both of the beast's hands. A shockwave exploded from the two, blowing the remaining villains back. Izuku brought his hands together and pulled, flipping the Nomu over his shoulder and driving it into the ground. As it started to get up, he put his fists together and brought them down on the monster's neck, slamming its head into the concrete, massive cracks forming around them. Shigaraki couldn't believe what he was seeing. This boy was beating Nomu, and he was doing it with ease. It's not fair. It's just not fair. He's cheating, he wailed. Kurogiri appeared next to him. One of the students escaped. The rest crushed the hired help with ease. It's over, he said. Shigaraki raked his nails along the back of his neck, drawing blood. It's not over. This isn't even the final boss. He whispered, staring at the green-haired boy. Nomo, he yelled. Don't hold back. The beast looked at him for a moment, then opened its mouth and let loose a deafening wail. Izuku stumbled away from it, clutching his head in pain. The Nomu got up and slammed its fist into Izuku's gut, sending him flying. He landed 100 meters away, carving a trench into the pristine lawn. The Nomu tore after him, still wailing. Shigaraki nodded. So he has a weakness, he thought savagely. Izuku stood up, shaking his head. I can't afford to be put out of commission every time there's a loud noise, he thought as a massive fist slammed into his face, breaking his nose for the first time in his life. He staggered, wincing at the noise the Nomu was emitting, but he forced himself to ignore it. He dodged the Nomu's next blow and struck its knee, but nothing happened. You can't win. Nomu has shock absorption. The lead villain gloated. Izuku narrowed his eyes. Shock absorption, huh? Not nullification, he thought, dodging another punch. I wonder what would happen if I overwhelmed that quirk. Izuku smiled. He knew how to win. Izuku sped forward, a green-topped blur as he started landing punch after punch on the Nomu, quickly overwhelming its defense. To the villains, it seemed like Nomu was reeling from nothing. Izuku reared his fist back, emerald eyes glinting. Detroit, smosh. With a final hit, the Nomu was sent careening through the air. It burst through the far wall towards the sun, showing no signs of stopping. Shigaraki slammed his fists into the ground. That's not fair. You cheated, he screamed at Izuku, running at him, with his hands outreached. The freckled teen raised an eyebrow, dodging the hand and backhanding him into Kurogiri, who wasted no time, warping the two of them away. Before he did, Shigaraki looked at Izuku, hatred in his eyes. It's not over, hero, he said, venom practically dripping from his voice as he disappeared into black smoke. Izuku finally let go of a breath he didn't know he was holding. He fell to his knees, smiling as rays of sunlight washed over his face from the massive hole in the roof. It is all right, why? Because I am here. It's all right. Izuku yelled back. I defeated the All Might killer. All Might blinked at him, then grinned. Well done, young Midoriya, he said, giving his young pupil a massive smile and a thumbs up. Izuku raised his fist, smiling widely. He looked to the sun again, feeling its warmth fill him with strength and confidence. Unbeknownst to him, a sing drop of blood ran down his chin onto his pendant. The rest of the students began appearing around Izuku. They were staring at him, he realized with a start. He smiled weakly at them. Heck of a field trip, huh? Izuku raised his fist, smiling widely. He looked to the sun again, feeling its warmth fill him with strength and confidence. Unbeknownst to him, a sing drop of blood ran down his chin onto his pendant. The rest of the students began appearing around Izuku. They were staring at him, he realized with a start. He smiled weakly at them. Heck of a field trip, huh? Bar somewhere. Tamura Shigaraki crashed to the floor, blood pouring from underneath his mask. Kurojairi ducked behind the counter of the bar, pulling out a first aid kit. He hurried to his master's pupil, whose eyes were wide with rage. Across the room, a computer screen flared to life, showing a black screen. What happened? Has All Might been defeated? A disembodied voice filled with malice emitted from the screen. Shigaraki forced himself up, ignoring Kurojairi's protests. Sensei, he wasn't even there. Shigaraki said angrily, grabbing a bar stool and turning it to dust. Calm yourself, Tamura. The voice said sternly. Shigaraki stood still, working his jaw up and down. He took a deep breath, then nodded. Yes, Sensei. He said, anger barely contained. What happened? Sensei stated with a voice that offered no compromise. Shigaraki lifted his head. All Might wasn't there. He said, voice hoarse. Oh, then who defeated the Nomu? Sensei asked. Shigaraki slammed his hand into another bar stool, disintegrating it. It was one of the students. He overwhelmed Nomu's shock absorption quirk nearly instantly, and he didn't even look fazed. Shigaraki said, scratching his neck so hard it started bleeding. A student? Did you get his name? Sensei asked, curious. Your successor, Tashinori? He thought. Shigaraki shook his head. No. He snarled. All I know is he has green hair and he's tall. He sat on a bar stool, pulling the hand off his face and letting Kurojairi tend to his wounds. He turned to the dark screen. What do I do, Sensei? He asked. We will watch for the student during the sports festival. They'll go ahead with it to put on a brave face. Sensei said, his voice resonating around the bar. In the meantime, you must fill your ranks again, with more powerful allies than the small-time thugs we hired. Shigaraki nodded, scratching the back of his neck rapidly. It was a good enough plan for now. Patience, Tamura, you'll have your revenge on All Might, Sensei said. A vicious chuckle resonated throughout the bar, making its inhabitants flinch. We'll take everything from him. 2 days later, Izuku yawned, scratching the back of his head absent-mindedly. He and the rest of 1A had been given 2 days of rest time, and Izuku was bored out of his mind. All Might had given him a pat on the back, told him he was proud of him, then forbade him from training. Get some rest, young Midoriya, you deserve it. His mentor said. If only he could believe that. He hadn't stopped the Nomo from hurting Aizawa, and his other classmates had gotten hurt. Izuku sighed in frustration. If only I had been faster. He could level buildings with a single punch. He could catch a bullet out of midair. And what an effort it had been to get All Might to shoot at him. He had to swear at least a dozen times to never mention it to his mother. He could shoot laser beams from his eyes that cut a giant robot's arm off and see through just about any material in the world. And apparently, now he could breathe ice out of his lungs. Izuku frowned. Where do I come from? He thought. Did I have parents? Did they love me? It was always in the back of his mind. To know that he wasn't his mom's biological son. That for whatever reason his birth parents sent him away. It wasn't an easy thing to swallow, but Izuku was nothing if not resilient. Mom loves me, and that's all that matters. Izuku decided, walking forwards determinedly. Right as a little girl ran out of an alley and into his leg. Izuku froze, looking down. A young child, maybe 6 or 7, was lying on the pavement rubbing her horned head where she ran into his thigh. Oh! Izuku exclaimed. I'm sorry, are you? Izuku trailed off, narrowing his eyes. The girl was in a pale hospital gown. Her arms and legs were wrapped in bandages. She was thin, far too thin for a girl her age. He squinted harder, activating his X-ray vision. Her arms and legs were covered in cuts. Her bones had been broken dozens of times. It was like she had been blown up and put back together again and again. Hurt? Izuku asked softly. The girl looked up at him through a curtain of pure white hair with crimson eyes. Eyes that were far too old for one so young. Izuku knelt, coming face to face with the girl. She shied away from him. "Hey," Izuku said, holding both of his hands up. "I don't bite." The girl looked at him blankly. Izuku scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "My name's Izuku, what's yours?" he asked, smiling gently. The girl looked at him, gazing into his eyes. "Eri," she said, her voice hoarse, like she'd been screaming for hours. Izuku's heart clenched at the thought. The green-haired teen nodded. "Okay, Eri, do you know where your mother is?" Eri looked at him quizzically. "What's a mother?" she asked. If possible, Izuku's heart clenched even harder. He gently asked more questions, each answer filling him with dread. No, she didn't know what a father was either. No, she didn't know what a home was. No, she didn't know where she was. Izuku slowly put a hand on Eri's shoulder. The girl stiffened like a board before she relaxed when she realized he wasn't going to hurt her. Izuku filed that information as red flag hashtag, the place you're living, do you like it there? A single headshake. Do you want to go back? Another headshake more forceful than the last. Izuku swallowed thickly, afraid of the next question's answer. Do they hurt you there? Eri's eyes widened, her head snapping up to look at Izuku. Her gaze pierced through him. A single, almost imperceptible nod. Blood rushed into Izuku's ears. The thought that anyone would even think to harm such a precious little child makes him want to tear the one's responsible limb from limb. Instead, he gently pulled the trembling girl into a hug. Time stopped for Eri. For years her only experience with human contact was through the point of a needle or the clamping of a cold hand on her skin, just before she exploded into millions of pieces. She had never experienced this before. It felt like an all-encompassing warmth, like the sun as it set across the horizon. For the first time in her life, Eri felt safe. There she is. Kill the kid and get her. Izuku looked up. A black van screeched to a halt a dozen feet in front of him. Half a dozen men in suits poured out of its sides. There were guns in their hands. Izuku looked down. Eri's eyes were wide, her breath coming in gasps. She was terrified. To them. Izuku looked back up. Bullets were flying through the air toward him. A stray bullet was only inches away. From Eri's eye. The teen's arm moved of its own accord, grabbing the bullet out of midair. Time sped up and Izuku spun around as dozens of bullets slammed through his jacket. They kind of tickled. Izuku crouched down, shielding Eri even as he looked deep into her eyes. Do you trust me? The pause. A small, firm nod. Hold on. Izuku was getting stronger every day. Every single hour, every single minute, every single second, his body was absorbing more and more, making him faster, stronger, tougher. The bloody nose he received 2 days before would never happen again. That meant that when Izuku jumped into the air to escape from the thugs intent on killing him and kidnapping Eri, he obliterated the concrete he was standing on and created a mild earthquake that shook the entire city. It meant that there was a shock wave that shattered glass and threw the would-be kidnappers hundreds of feet away. It meant that he was sent 20 miles into the air with a single leap. For a moment, Izuku felt like he could fly. Another thing to note. Crap. He had never done this before. Oh my god. And he forgot what goes up must come down. Izuku flailed about with his legs, his arms still tight around Eri, who looked at him with wide eyes. Izuku flashed a wide smile at her. Don't worry. I have this under control. She didn't believe him. If her expression was any indication. Izuku chuckled nervously. What I wouldn't give to be able to fly right now, he thought. Izuku paused. He had such a weird assortment of quirks and had a new one practically every other week. Could he fly? He'd never tried before. He looked down. He was roughly 5 miles above the ground now. He had traveled farther than intended if the forest he was rapidly approaching was any indicator. Izuku shrugged. It was worth a shot. He closed his eyes and focused on the feelings each of his powers gave him. When he first discovered his strength with all might. When his eyesight flickered and he could see through anything and anyone. 3. When he breathed out and ice covered the deck of the boat. 2. When pain built behind his eyes and cut the arm of a giant robot to save his friend. 1. Izuku opened his eyes. The ground was almost upon them and he felt no different. He quickly turned around so he'd land on his back. He closed his eyes and clutched Eri tighter against him. This is going to hurt. Zuku? Are you alive? A finger poked Izuku's face. The verdette groaned. 5 more minutes. He muttered. Another poke, this time more forcefully. Can you please wake up? There's a tall skeleton that wants to talk to you. Yes, you have some explaining to do, young Midoriya. Izuku's eyes shot open. With a groan he pulled himself to a sitting position, inadvertently knocking Eri off of him. The teenager blanched. In front of him was an Izuku-sized trench 100 feet long and at least a dozen feet deep. But that wasn't what made Izuku nervous. That honor belonged to the tall man with piercing blue eyes in a fuzzy red, white, and blue bathrobe staring right at him. Izuku scrambled to his feet. All Might, he exclaimed. What are you doing here? The number 1 hero stuck his thumb behind his shoulder. I live here. He deadpanned. Izuku looked past his mentor's shoulder, where a ranch-style house, complete with a wraparound porch, was situated on a hill. Izuku blinked. I thought you lived at UA. All Might snorted. I didn't always work at UA, you know. He pointed a bony finger at Izuku. And don't change the subject. How did you end up here with Dash? He looked down at Eri, who had been looking from one person to the next. What's your name? He asked. The white-haired child started and hid behind Izuku's leg, peering up at the strange blonde man. Her name's Eri, Izuku said. And why is she with you? All Might asked. Izuku squared his shoulders, his gaze hardening. Because some bad men were going to take her away. The teen said, tossing the bullet he caught to All Might. The teen locked eyes with his mentor. And they were willing to kill me to get her. The blonde hero coughed, blood running down his chin. Maybe you should come inside and start from the beginning. So, let me get this straight. All Might groaned as he leaned down into the fridge, grabbing a soda for Izuku and a beer for himself. Non-alcoholic, of course, losing half of his stomach had swiftly ended his drinking career. He handed the soda to Izuku before beckoning him to follow and flopping down in his recliner in the living room, where Eri was happily munching away on a bright red apple on the couch. She made sure to scoot closer to Izuku when he sat down next to her, to which he responded by wrapping her in an extra-large All Might blanket, limited edition. The one with the hoodie, which was now presently draped over Eri's small head. All Might snapped his fingers at Izuku to get his attention. You two met on the side of the road, then you were suddenly attacked and you, Izuku, decided that the best course of action would be to leap out of the city into the countryside? The teen in question blushed. I didn't know I would go that far. He muttered. All Might sighed and dragged his hand down his face. I should scold you for such reckless use of your quirks and write you up. He said. Izuku looked up, indignation burning in his eyes. What should I have done? He exclaimed hotly. Leave her to be killed, or worse. The green-haired teen stopped himself, looking down at Eri, who was staring back at him. He pulled her into a hug, covering her ears at the same time. I used my X-ray vision. He said thickly. She's covered in scars. He looked back up to All Might, tears brimming in his eyes. I just couldn't sit by and let it happen. He said, bowing his head. I'm damn proud of you, Izuku. The teenager looked up in surprise. All Might shrugged. Despite the way you handled it, you accomplished the most important thing a hero can do. You saved someone. The number 1 hero stood up and clenched his fist, a massive smile adorning his skeletal features. And I'll be damned if I scolded you for doing exactly what I would have done. Izuku let out a choked sob and rushed forward, enveloping his mentor and idol in a bone-crushing hug. Ak! All Might coughed, spitting out blood. Izuku stepped away quickly. Sorry, he exclaimed. I just needed to hear that. He finished, rubbing his neck. All Might pulled out a red, white, and blue handkerchief, wiping the blood off his chin. It's quite all right, young Midoriya. He gasped. I never seem to run out of blood, no matter how many times I cough. He laughed. It's really quite concerning. Izuku shot him a deadpan look. Right. Now. All Might said, looking at Eri, who had hidden behind Izuku's leg again. I already called someone I know on the force, so we should get going to the station now. He stood up and made to walk out. All Might, you're not wearing pants. Right after I get dressed. All Might's yellow Camaro roared down the highway, weaving in and out of traffic. Izuku sat in the passenger seat with Eri, who had fallen asleep in his arms on the way there. Izuku looked down at her. Asleep, she seemed like a normal little girl, if not for the horrors hidden beneath the blanket and bandages. I promise. Izuku thought, pulling her closer to him. I'll keep you safe, Eri. The Camaro came to a stop in front of the police precinct. All Might tapped Izuku's shoulder. We're here. Izuku nodded, jostling Eri's shoulder. Hey Eri, it's time to wake up. He whispered. Eri opened her eyes slowly, stretching outwards. She looked around with half-lidded eyes. It wasn't a dream, she murmured. Izuku's heart broke all over again, but he pushed past it, nudging Eri again. He gave her a wide smile. No, it wasn't a dream. He said. You're never going back with them ever again. I promise. Eri sat there dumbfoundedly, before throwing her arms around Izuku, sobbing quietly. It was like this that Izuku got out of the car and walked into the precinct. Izuku knew it probably looked weird, but he couldn't bring himself to care. He followed All Might deep into the precinct, where they were met by a man with black hair in a tan trench coat. Detective Tsukachi. The man said, I felt the ground shake about 4 hours ago. He raised an eyebrow. And glass shattered. Izuku wilted under the man's gaze. Sound familiar? I didn't mean to do it, Izuku muttered. Eri was in danger. The detective nodded once, then looked at All Might. All I need to hear. There won't be any charges, since all the men found at the scene technically don't exist. All Might blinked at that. You mean Dash? No prints, no ID, nothing, Tsukachi confirmed. Now, let's see if Eri's in the same situation. As he talked, a nurse came in through the door holding a tray. She walked over to Eri and Izuku with a smile on her face. Just one prick, honey, and you're good to go, she said. Eri shied away from her, clinging desperately to Izuku's neck. The horn on her head began to grow. No, she whispered fiercely, panic dancing behind her eyes. Izuku shushed her, rubbing circles down her back. You don't have good experiences with needles, do you? He asked gently. The white-haired girl shook her head, beams of energy bouncing off her horn. They'd poke me again and again and again. She whispered. Then they'd take me apart and put me back together. She whimpered, burying her face in his shoulder. Izuku ran his hand through her hair. I know you're scared, he said. Eri looked back at him. I get scared too, he confessed. Eri's eyes widened. She pulled back, looking at him closely. You do? She asked. Izuku nodded solemnly, motioning to the nurse, who nodded. Yeah, I'm scared all the time, he said. One time, I was out with Kakin, and he and I fell into the stream. I was so scared that I was going to get washed away, but Dash. But what? Eri exclaimed. Izuku shook his head. Behind them, the nurse pushed Eri's sleeve up to her shoulder. The girl didn't notice, her focus solely on Izuku. Hold your horses, I was getting there. Izuku chuckled. Anyway, we fell in the river, but guess what? What? Eri whispered. The stream only came up to our ankles. Izuku laughed. Kakin smacked the water and stormed off, and I picked myself up and followed him. He was my hero back then. Izuku looked her in the eye. Sometimes things can be scary, but we can be strong. See, he said, pointing at her shoulder, where the nurse had just finished collecting a vial of blood. Eri's eyes widened. She spun back to Izuku. I didn't even feel it, she exclaimed. Izuku smiled. And you were so strong, Eri. Today you were my hero, he said softly. Eri sat there for a few moments. Then she threw her arms around Izuku, holding him tight. You're my hero, Izuku. On the other side of the planet, in a massive, ancient-looking palace, a pair of women looked on in silence as a hologram of Izuku's fight against the Nomu played between the marble pillars. The taller of the two crossed her toned forearms as she appraised the hero in training. She was dressed in form-fitting hoplite armor stained crimson and a dark blue battle skirt. Her toned arms were bare save for twin silver bracers strapped to her wrists, a matching silver tiara emblazoned with a star parting her jet-black hair over piercing blue eyes. At her side hung a fine sword and a glowing golden lasso. She had all the makings of a powerful warrior, her lithe form dotted with small scars. Her companion was visibly older and shorter, though not by much. In contrast to her counterpart, she wore a fine purple toga lined with gold. On her head rested a crown of golden laurels. Her hair was a dark brown and her eyes the same piercing blue as her companion. She carried herself with grace and elegance, born from centuries of ruling. Neither woman spoke as they watched Izuku land blow after blow on the beast. With a final yell, Izuku hit it with his hardest punch yet, sending the Birdman hybrid careening through the dome of the USJ. The hologram shifted to a feed on the roof, where the Nomu could be seen flying into the distance. The hologram shifted back to Izuku, who had now fallen to his knees. The shorter woman raised her hand, pausing the hologram. "He's strong," she said. Her companion snorted. "He's untrained." She scoffed. "What he did in 300 blows I could have done in 10. All the more reason to keep an eye on him." Her elder countered, twinkling knowingly. "But not by you." She put her hand up, silencing the warrior with a gesture. "Tartarus is stirring, I need you here." The dark-haired woman opened her mouth, then closed it. The warrior reluctantly nodded, looking back at the hero in training. "Then who will you send?" she asked. The other woman looked back at Izuku and smirked. "I have someone in mind. All the more reason to keep an eye on him." Her elder countered, twinkling knowingly. "But not by you." She put her hand up, silencing the warrior with a gesture. "Tartarus is stirring, I need you here." The dark-haired woman opened her mouth, then closed it and nodded, looking at the hero in training. "Then who will you send?" she asked. The other woman looked back at Izuku and smirked. "I have someone in mind." Toshinori clasped his hands together, watching as Izuku tried and failed to convince Eri to let go of him. The trio had gone to Toshinori's house at UA while Naomasa pulled the necessary strings to expedite Eri's adoption process. For intents and purposes, Eri would be Toshinori's daughter. It was frightening to think about, even if Izuku seemed to have the big brother thing to a T. A knock on the door dragged Toshinori from his thoughts, the blonde giant quickly making his way to the front door. He opened it to reveal a concerned-looking Inko. "What's he done this time?" she sighed. Toshinori said nothing, stepping to the side to reveal the green-haired teen in question. Said teen had the decency to look sheepish as Eri sat perched on his shoulders. "Hey, Mom." Inko just stood there dumbfounded, her jaw slightly open. Izuku pressed forward, speaking rapidly. "I know what I did was stupid, but Eri, this is Eri by the way, was running from some bad guys and she was really scared and I just couldn't do nothing, so I jumped. Fell into Toshinori's backyard, and then he brought us to the police and we found out Eri doesn't officially exist, so Toshinori adopted her, but he doesn't know what he's doing, so he needs your help." Izuku finally stopped, his chest heaving. Toshinori smacked his face. Inko stared at him, her jaw hanging open. Izuku scratched the back of his neck sheepishly. "So, yeah," he finished lamely. Inko blinked once, then grabbed Toshinori by the arm and dragged him to the bedroom, shoving him inside. She turned back to Izuku, freezing him in place with a glare. "Do not listen in on us, young man. Am I clear?" Izuku nodded his head rapidly, sending Eri flying into his arms. Inko sighed. "Just sit down," she said exasperatedly, walking into the bedroom and closing the door. Inko turned around to find Toshinori sitting on the bed, a nervous look on his face. She sent him a stern glare. How much of that was true? The blonde hero tilted his head, thinking hard. All of it," he said weakly. Inko took a step forward. "He jumped a dozen miles to your home here in UA?" Toshinori shook his head. "About 100 actually. I was supposed to be staying at my country home this weekend," Toshinori said. Inko blinked in surprise at that but chose to ignore that tidbit for now. She took another step forward. "And you adopted her?" she asked. Toshinori nodded. "Izuku wanted to, but I told him that was insane." He chuckled. Inko took another step forward, stopping just in front of the number 1 hero. And the last thing? About you needing me? Inko asked. The blonde man looked up, swallowing thickly. Was it just him, or had it gotten hot in here? Why yes. Toshinori stammered. I may have adopted Eri, but I don't know the first thing about raising a child. Toshinori ran his hand through his mane of hair. And you did an amazing job raising Izuku. Inko blinked, a blush forming on her face. You really mean that? She asked. Toshinori nodded, a genuine grin on his face. Inko grabbed him by the face and kissed him. After getting over his shock, Toshinori kissed her back with enthusiasm. After a minute, Inko pulled back and smiled. Of course I'll help you, Toshi. Inko and Toshinori returned to the living room holding hands. Izuku was sitting on the couch, his face beet red, his fingers stuffed in his ears. Inko sighed. You heard anyway, didn't you? Izuku nodded, staring straight ahead. Toshinori coughed awkwardly. Well, the important thing is that she agreed to help, right, young Izuku? The green-haired teen didn't respond. Well, I'll grab a pizza, the blonde man exclaimed, shifting into his muscle form and dashing out of the door and into the night. Inko sighed fondly. She looked down at Eri, who was still sitting in Izuku's arms, staring at her wide-eyed. Inko sat down on an ottoman in front of the duo. Hello, Eri, I'm Inko. She said gently. I'm Izuku's mom. The white-haired girl's eyes widened, staring intently at this new person in front of her. What's a mom? She asked. Inko's heart lurched painfully. A mom is someone who takes care of you, Eri, she said. She teaches you lessons, and supports and loves you until her dying breath. Eri nodded thoughtfully. You love Izuku? She asked. Inko nodded. I love him very much. The green-haired woman hesitated. She needed to choose her next words carefully. You care about Izuku a lot, right? The red-eyed girl nodded firmly. Well, he goes to a school for heroes. It's not really a place for children. Eri nodded slowly, tilting her head to the side. Inko swallowed thickly. I'm going to be hanging around here a lot, it seems. Could I take care of you as well? She asked. Eri looked at her, then back to Izuku, who had finally snapped out of his trance and was staring at the two of them. Would you be all right with that, Eri? He asked. Eri bit her lip, looking back and forth between the two of them. Okay, she said. Izuku grinned, giving the small girl a gentle hug. Don't worry, we still have 2 more days before I need to go back to class. Eri nodded, arms wrapped around Izuku's neck. Inko smiled. Her little boy was growing up. I am here with pizza. Inko sighed fondly, Izuku stared off into space again, and Eri looked curiously at the blonde man. What's pizza? 3 days later, Monday. Izuku walked into the massive halls of UA with a smile on his face. The last 3 days had been awkward, but fun. His mom and Toshinori had taken to parenting Eri with gusto, attending to her every need. They were spoiling her rotten, and deservedly so in Izuku's opinion. The white-haired girl had gone through enough torment for a lifetime. Rounding the corner, Izuku made it to Class 1A. He'd barely made it a step in the door before he was swarmed by his classmates. Dude, you were so manly, Kirishima exclaimed. Indeed, Midoriya, you carried yourself with the essence of a true hero. Ida stated, arms chopping up and down. Yeah, you were awesome, Midori. Ashido yelled, waving her arms in the air. Izuku stopped at that one. Midori? He asked. The acid quirk user nodded, giving him a teasing grin. Don't even try to fight it, Midori. Izuku chuckled and shook his head. Something tells me I'll have better luck facing off against that Nomu. He said, making his way to his seat, ignoring the glare Bakugo was sending his way. I wonder who our substitute will be. Ochako said to Tsuyu, finger on her chin. The green-haired teen shrugged. They got their answer when a dark-haired mummy limped through the doorway, both arms in casts. Good morning, class, Aizawa said, oblivious to their shocked faces. Sir, Ida exclaimed, are you sure you should be up and moving already? My physical condition is inconsequential, Aizawa stated, walking to his customary position at the podium. I can talk and walk so I can teach. Midoriya. Izuku straightened his back. "Sir," he said, "you have my gratitude, but pull something like the USJ again and you'll have detention for a week," Aizawa said. Izuku nodded seriously. While he might have done a good deed, Izuku was still beholden to the rules and laws of society. All Might had given him a similar talk over the weekend after the excitement died down. In his seat, Bakugo silently fumed. "I mess up once and get a week of detention. Dimin Deku ifs up and gets praise?" Aizawa put his bandaged hands on top of the podium. "But that being said, I have some announcements. The first is that Mineta has dropped out of the hero course." Unbidden, a small cheer rose from the female students in the class. Kaminari raised his hand. "What, why?" he asked. Aizawa shrugged. Deep in the fire zone section of the USJ, Mineta huddled in one of many rooms at the end of a long hallway. The boy was terrified out of his mind. He went to UA to get girls, not this. He was in over his head. He didn't have a powerful quirk like Midoriya or Bakugo, he just had sticky ball for FS sake. A Spanish-accented voice drifted down to the hall. "Poor boy," freezing him in place. "I had doubts over Shigaraki's proposal, but I must admit, I'm enjoying this game of cat and mouse." Heavy boots stomped on the other end of the hall, shaking the room Mineta was in. The small teen covered his mouth to stifle the screams of terror that threatened to escape him. The sound of wood crunching reverberated throughout the building as the man that was searching for him smashed through the thin door of one of the rooms. There was some shuffling as the man leaned into the burning room, followed seconds later by another door caving in on itself. Mineta curled harder on himself, desperately wishing that this was a dream and it would shift to his normal dreams of large-breasted women. His pursuer was methodical, going down the hallway one shattered doorway at a time, steadily growing closer to Mineta, whose heart was beating a mile a minute by now. Another smash, another splintered door. Finally, those heavy boots stopped in front of Mineta's room. An evil laugh escaped the villain. "Found you, little mouse." "Bane!" A voice called out on the street of the building. The man, now identified as Bane, growled in annoyance and stomped away from the door. Against his better judgment, Mineta crawled over to the window, peering out of it to see the tall man made of smoke that sent him here in the first place, holding a first aid kit of all things. He was joined by a heavily muscled man almost as tall as All Might. He wore a black bulletproof vest with nothing underneath, leaving his enormous arms bare. The man's face was covered by a black luchador mask with red eyes, the back of which was connected to a canister on his belt by a winding plastic tube. Said tube was filled with a venomous green liquid, sent straight to the villain's head. Massive steel-toed boots left cracks in the pavement as Bane stomped over to his comrade. "What is it, Kurogyri?" he stated bluntly. "The Nomo failed, and the rest of the heroes are on their way," Kurogyri said, tapping what counted as his foot impatiently. "Shigaraki has already retreated." Bane cursed in Spanish. "Can that man-child do anything right?" he groused. Kurogyri looked warily where he knew the central plaza was. Bane dashed out. The villain started. Bane waved his hands, sighing frustratedly. I know. A portal of black smoke appeared, and Kurogyri stepped through it. Bane went to follow, but stopped, looking over his shoulder and stopping on Mineta. For a moment, the only thing the boy could see was red. Blood red. "Until we meet again, little mouse." He cackled viciously, then disappeared in an instant. Mineta dropped to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. "Again," he exclaimed. "But no woman in the world is worth this." He was the only one to be dropped off alone, Aizawa explained bluntly. Apparently he was hunted by Bane, and only barely survived. The class stopped cheering, an unusual outpouring of sympathy going towards the class pervert. Bane was a notorious mercenary. Not much was known about him, other than he had a tendency to use drags to enhance his already considerable physical attributes. Aizawa was concerned, but there was nothing they could do about it. They would just have to wait until this League of Villains showed up again. Regardless, Mineta has made his choice, Aizawa stated. This means we have an open spot in Class 1A. Normally we would take the highest scorer from Gen Ed, but Principal Nizu decided an increase in international relations was necessary. Aizawa walked over to the door and opened it. You can come in now. Aizawa returned to his podium followed by one of the most beautiful girls Izuku had ever seen. She was tall, easily 5'9" if Izuku had to guess, and powerfully built. Jet black hair fell to her shoulders. A sharp jawline framed full lips and a sharp nose. She cut a striking figure, her bronze skin standing out against her uniform. But what caught his attention the most was her eyes. They were an electric blue, piercing through everything she rested her gaze on. Aizawa stepped forward. This is Donna Troy. She's a transfer student from Greece. He explained. Donna smiled, waving her hand in greeting. Hello, she said brightly. You can call me Donna. I'm so excited to be here, she said. Aizawa turned to Izuku Midoriya. As class representative, it's your responsibility to make sure Troy here feels welcome and knows where to go. Today she's your shadow, he said. Izuku's eyes widened. Realizing his teacher was waiting for a response, Izuku nodded his head, internally freaking out. Crap, she's sitting right behind me. Yes, sir. Aizawa grunted in satisfaction, turning to Donna. Your seat is right behind him. If you need anything, let either him or I know. Donna nodded, making her way over to the seat directly behind Izuku. Once she sat down, Aizawa tapped the podium, bringing the class's attention to him. The second announcement is a reminder. The sports festival is in 2 weeks. A stunned silence filled the class. Most of them had forgotten about it. Jairu raised her hand. That's still going on? We got attacked less than a week ago, she said. Aizawa shrugged. Be that as it may, Principal Nizu believes a display of strength is necessary to show civilians and villains alike that UA will not be cowed by a cowardly bunch of thugs. Izuku wanted to point out that it wasn't just a cowardly bunch of thugs but also a beast supposedly capable of killing All Might, but wisely decided to keep his mouth shut. Aizawa stepped in front of the podium. The sports festival is the perfect opportunity for each of you to put yourselves out there. The whole world will have their eyes on you, especially after the incident. Aizawa scanned over the class, meeting their eyes. I expect each and every one of you to put in your best effort, plus ultra style. The class, barring Donna because she was confused, Todoroki because he didn't care, and Bakugo because he was an a-hole, raised their fists. Plus ultra. Several hours later, lunch. Inwardly, Izuku sighed with relief. He had guided Donna through the average morning at UA without making a complete fool of himself. Just one tiny incident with a wardrobe malfunction during heroics class. Honestly, the gym jackets were way too small. It's not like he's trying to tear them. It just happened. His thoughts were interrupted by a tap on his shoulder. He looked over to find Donna smirking at him. So Izuku, where are you sitting? Unbidden, Izuku flushed. Donna had taken to calling him by his first name almost immediately once she realized how much he was affected by it. His protests had died once she insisted he call her by her first name as well. Shaking his blush off, Izuku pointed to where Uraraka and Ida were sitting. Over there. You're welcome to join us, Izuku said as evenly as he could manage. Donna looked around, then shrugged. Why not, she stated, grabbing a tray from the line and following Izuku to his friends. Ida stood up, bowing to Donna robotically. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Troy, he said. I don't think we've been properly introduced. I'm Tenya Ida. You may call me Ida. The bespectacled teen's hands chopped up and down robotically. Donna gave him a friendly smile. Nice to meet you, I'd shake your hand but dash. Donna looked down, where a massive tray full of every dish on the menu rested. My hands are a little full right now. Ida shook his head, sitting down. No worries. As Donna and Uraraka exchanged niceties, Izuku looked at the table. Uraraka and Ida were sitting on the same side, which left only 2 places at the table. 2 turned to 1 as Donna sat down and pulled out a shiny metal stick from her bag and began to dig into her meal. Izuku and his friends stared. Uraraka raised her hand. Troy, what is that? Donna looked up, her mouth full of ramen. She swallowed quickly, looking at the pointy stick in her hand. She looked back at Uraraka, then Izuku. It's a fork. Blank stares met her eyes. Have you guys never seen a fork? Ida raised a finger. I have heard of forks, but I've never seen one until now. Dana looked around, getting a nod of confirmation from Uraraka. Izuku shrugged, still standing. I've looked into them because of All Might, but never got a chance to see one. Dana shrugged. I couldn't figure out how to eat with chopsticks quick enough, so I stopped trying. She gestured to the mountain of food in front of her. I eat a lot, so unless I want to skip class, I'm going to keep using my fork. Izuku nodded, finally sitting down next to Dana. Makes sense. Do you eat so much because of your quirk? He asked, notebook in hand. Dana looked at it incredulously. Where did that come from? She asked, looking across the table. Uraraka and Ida shrugged. We don't really know. I find it best to not think about it too much. Dana shook her head, turning back to Izuku. To answer your question, Izuku, yeah, I eat a lot because of my quirk. Izuku nodded expectantly, pen raised. And what is your quirk? He asked. Dana took another massive bite of ramen, taking some time to chew before swallowing. It's called Amazon. I have enhanced strength, speed, durability, and a bunch of other cool stuff. She said, it runs in the family. Izuku's pen was flying across the page, smoke curling around his verdette curls as he mumbled to himself. Dana looked at him strangely. Does this happen often? Ida nodded. Whenever he talks about quirks, yes. Uraraka put a finger on her chin. So you're pretty strong, huh? I wonder how a fight between you and Midoriya would go down. Dana raised an eyebrow at that, looking back to the green-haired teen. What makes you say that? She asked. Uraraka smiled excitedly. Because he's the strongest guy in Class 1A, he came first in the entrance exam, she said. Now both of Dana's eyebrows were raised. Really? She said, an excited edge in her voice. Ida nodded. Midoriya is incredibly powerful, as befitting of the class representative. Dana looked back at Izuku. She tapped him on the shoulder. Izuku stopped mumbling with a start, turning to Dana sporting a light blush. Sorry, he exclaimed, scratching the back of his neck. I kinda get in my own world sometimes. Dana shook her head, a grin on her face. No worries, dude. Uraraka and Ida here were telling me you're pretty strong. She said, leaning forward intently. The blush intensified. I am, I guess. He said, shrugging his broad shoulders. Uraraka rolled her eyes exasperatedly. I guess he says. You destroyed a zero-pointer with one punch. Dana's grin grew even wider. You up for a spar after class, Izuku? Izuku tapped his pen on his notebook. I don't know, I need to get home. He began. Dana gave him a pleading look. Come on, Izuku, the sports festival is in 2 weeks. Time to our plus ultra, she exclaimed. Izuku relented. Fine, but I need to get back before dinner. He said, shuddering unconsciously. Tashinori and his mom were going on a date tonight. Dana nodded, sticking out her hand. Izuku accepted it. The dark-haired girl grinned. Great. It's a date. Date. End of school day. Izuku was a 6-foot-something bundle of nerves by the end of the day. He was almost 100% sure that Dana was joking, but the fact remained that she was a beautiful girl, and Izuku had a terrible track record with beautiful girls. When the bell rang, he jumped out of his seat, hastily making his way to the door. When he opened it, he was met with what seemed like the entire student body of UA, his classmates crowded around him. What are you guys doing here? Ashido exclaimed. Yeah, you're blocking the way, dudes. So unmanly. Kirishima added. Bakugo snorted. They're here to scope out the competition's shitty hair. We're the class that got attacked by villains. The explosive teen snorted derisively. Idiots. Move. Bakubro. Not cool. Kirishima cried out. Yeah, the rest of the school is going to think we're all arrogant pricks like you. Kaminari complained. I don't care what they think. They're all pebbles beneath my feet. Bakugo fired back, palms popping. The students parted to reveal a tall purple-haired boy with gaunt cheeks and bags under his eyes. You shouldn't disregard us so easily. The boy rasped. Some of us in general studies have been itching for a chance at your spot on the hero course. What do you mean? Ashido exclaimed. The boy looked at her with heavy-lidded eyes, an evil grin on his face. Didn't you hear? If the school deems your performance at the sports festival unsatisfactory to the standards of the hero course, they'll see fit to remove you and replace you with someone else. He looked over Class 1A. With that in mind, this is my formal declaration of war. I will be taking one of you people's place in the hero course in 2 weeks. With that, the tall boy left, students parting in front of him. Bakugo snarled. Izuku sighed. With that threat, as well as the arrival of Class 1B and their subsequent posturing, Izuku and Dana walked to the empty gym Epsilon. A quick talk with Aizawa had given them access to the old facility on campus. It was specifically designed to handle strength quirks. The whole facility was built like a fighting arena, complete with a massive fighting ring sunk into the ground with 100 feet of solid concrete and steel reinforcing the walls. Ida and Uraraka couldn't join them, as they had their own training to get to. Izuku turned to Dana, who was looking around the gym, a mildly impressed look on her face. It's almost as big as my family's back home. She said, meet you in the ring in 5 minutes? Izuku said. Dana grinned savagely. You bet, she exclaimed, already walking to the girls' locker room. Izuku quickly followed suit, changing into a gray compression shirt and gym shorts. He walked back out to find Dana already in the ring folding herself into a pigeon pose. Izuku blushed. She had changed into a black tank top and red athletic shorts, showing off her powerful arms and legs. With a start, he realized he'd been staring and quickly faced the wall, his face burning. So, Izuku, you know any martial arts? Karate? Taekwondo? Boxing? She asked, tapping him on the shoulder. Izuku shrugged sheepishly. I'm kinda self-taught, he said, scratching the back of his head. Dana deadpanned at him. You're considered the strongest in class and you've never been formally trained? She asked incredulously. No wonder Diana was worried. She thought. Izuku nodded. Alright, how about we spar, see where you're at, she proposed. Makes sense to me, Izuku said. The duo moved to the mat, placing themselves on opposite sides of the circle. Izuku raised his arms in a rough estimate of a boxer's stance. Dana sighed. She had her work ahead of her. Ready? Izuku nodded. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Izuku lunged forward, only to meet air as Dana seemingly vanished in front of him. Izuku blinked confusedly. Where did she go? He got his answer when a foot slammed into his side, sending him flying into the reinforced wall. The green-haired teen groaned, clutching his side. She hits harder than the Nomo. Dana grinned. What's the matter, Izuku? Is the big bad class representative giving up already? What happened to Plus Ultra? Izuku didn't answer, his hands forming fists. With a yell he lunged forward, fist outstretched. Again Dana seemingly disappeared, grabbing Izuku from behind and suplexing him headfirst into the ground, cracking the ring with the impact. Izuku pulled his head out of the floor, shaking the dust from his hair. He stood up, cracking his neck with a loud pop. That all you got? He asked. His future self would cringe with the stupidity of that statement. Dana's grin turned feral. She shot forward, her fist raised. Time slowed down for Izuku. He dodged to the right, avoiding his opponent's swing by centimeters before he swung his fist in a mighty overhand punch. It connected with Dana's cheek, launching the dark-haired girl into the wall, cracking it. Izuku blinked in shock. He didn't think he'd actually hit her with that. Crap, he exclaimed, running over to Dana, who was embedded in the wall, head hanging limply. Izuku grabbed her gingerly, pulling her out of the wall gently. Are you all right? A fist flew into his jaw in response, sending him careening into the ceiling. Izuku landed on the ground with a thump. The green-haired teen picked himself up, looking over to where Dana was staring at him, her signature feral grin in place. Now we're talking. 2 hours later. Izuku groaned, flipping on his back after yet another beatdown from Class 1A's new resident powerhouse. Dana sat down next to him, her chest heaving with exertion. I think that's enough for today. She panted. Izuku put up a thumb in agreement. Dana was relentless, a force of nature on the battlefield. She was just as strong as the Nomu and much faster, able to dance circles around the freckled teen. She was able to dodge or redirect just about everything he sent at her, and give just as much back. Dana stood up and stretched, inadvertently showing off her curves to Izuku, who quickly averted his eyes. So, you're strong but you have no technique. You were throwing haymakers left and right the entire time. She tapped her leg. You have legs, you know. Use them. Izuku nodded. It was good advice. He didn't kick as much because All Might relied on punches to get the job done, but he wasn't All Might. He needed to develop his own style unique to him. Dana ripped him from his musing with a tap on his shoulder. She handed him her phone. Put your number in. We're going to be doing this again. Izuku nodded, absent-mindedly putting his number in and handing it back to her. It was obvious that Dana had received formal training in numerous martial arts. And as the only person he'd met who could match his strength besides All Might, who couldn't spar anymore because of his condition, Dana would be invaluable. It wasn't until an hour later while playing hide and seek with Eri that Izuku realized that he gave his number to the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. Oh crap,